Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I'll be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, Mrs. Gio.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have a phenomenal show for you today. We are going to get into soul harvesting. We're going to get into the eclipse. We're going to get into the energetic changes and much, much more. You know what's funny is over the last couple of weeks, maybe month, I guess let me back up even further than that. I've talked about the eclipse August of 2017, which was like total freaking activation at that point. Supposedly on the 2nd of July, the portal closed, or that cycle ended, starting a new cycle now. During this time, we did everything from go and drink ayahuasca in the pyramid to reset the damn matrix to completely understanding who we are, where we come from, the nature of reality, so on and so forth. Just recently, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we saw the Aten. We saw the raw brain, the computer simulation, the central point of the computer simulation. I mean, we really started to map out this system that we're in. And then this energetic shift occurs right here and right now. And it could be due to this eclipse. But there is another site that we need to go to. Do you remember I was telling you this, Sheree? Mm-hmm. And during this last experience, I never really talked about it in public yet, but we have to go on an eclipse.
Yep.
I realized during the last experience, and I never talked about this because I needed time to really understand this, the eclipse created a portal. That's why we were able to see what we saw during that moment, because it created that portal and conduit into the other plane, whatever you want to call it, maybe the real world or deeper into the machine or whatever it was. And whatever energy was let in is also kind of spiraling through and perhaps closed now, or perhaps another portal opened.
Right. I think what happens with these eclipses is that it opens portals, it closes portals. But when it closes one, it's like another one opens, but it's a different one than the one that came before it. And that's meant to kind of cleanse the system and keep it from, it's just kind of, it's kind of like opening a different browser window and closing out a browser window that's got too many little tabs open in it and opening a whole new one.
It could be.
It clears out the system so that it doesn't trip itself up. So
now we try to simplify things here. We try to look at things that are actually very ancient, but we're putting them into a modern terminology and creating a modern lexicon to describe essentially what the ancients have been describing since the beginning of time.
Oh, yeah.
And we're at the birth of artificial intelligence, as above, so below. And this artificial intelligence that is being birthed now is giving us clues as to how this matrix was constructed, as to how the energies flow. I mean, you hear about the shaman, the energy healers, and they move energy around. Well, really, when you think about it, what is energy? Energy is code. And so they're moving code around. They're reshaping code. It's always been like that. I mean, even science uses that same terminology with DNA code and the genome and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So the ancient shaman and ancient magicians were really just ancient coders, so to speak.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Their same exact job, just put in a different context because they didn't understand computers. They didn't understand what we understand in our modern age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I have been following somebody on YouTube, and they have been coming to similar conclusions, maybe a little bit of different language, but similar conclusions about what's going on in the energetic realm and the importance of these solar eclipses and lunar eclipses at the same time. What I mentioned this in the stream earlier because I did a little other thing about cats and how the felines are coming in right now and they're kind of reinforcements, which is what I was talking with our guest about before the show, about how now this is the time for the cats to rise. But I had somewhere where I was going with that.
The rise of the felines.
The rise of the felines, yes. I completely lost my train of thought. So why don't you introduce our guest and we'll go from there?
Yes, definitely. Auset EyowaKu. Auset's life work is dedicated to assisting those who are willing to expand their minds and nurture their spirits by acknowledging their own power from within. As a contemporary shaman and practicing spiritual counselor, her passion is to encourage and help others tap into their own unique, holistic intelligence. Auset has created many online communities, both privately and publicly, that pours into universal principles, spiritual common sense, and is relatable to most people, no matter what level they consider themselves to be spiritually. That's an amazing intro for an amazing woman. We've been keeping up with her work for the last several months, and she is just awesome.
The name, too. The name drew me first and foremost.
Me too.
And you know how I am. Most of the time when I see people using an ancient name like that, I'm like, I kind of veer away from them.
Right.
But then the energy also pulled me even closer, and I'm like, I recognize this. This is a familiar energy here. This is somebody that I need to talk to. So I'm so glad that we finally get to connect with her. Auset, how are you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so excited to get into all of what we're going to get into tonight. So thank you for having me. It's interesting. Before we even get started, I just want to show you something just so that you believe me. As soon as you guys got started, out of nowhere, there's a little beetle here, an actual beetle. It's upside down now, but it's like a little, you see the top?
It's like a little dung beetle.
Like a little dung beetle.
Yes. So there's a story behind that. Hold on, I'm turning my phone back around. There's a story behind that. So, of course, the synchronicity is I'm wearing an actual scarab right now for a very specific reason. And this little, I feel like it's a female energy here. She just came in as soon as you guys started the broadcast. So
fantastic. I always look at the signs and symbols and everything around, and sometimes they are uncanny and very, very, very synchronistic.
Can't make this up.
Now your second name. I'm gonna butcher it, but I'm gonna try. EyowaKu.
EyowaKu. Yes. So
EyowaKu.
Both names are ascended names, for lack of better terms. But the EyowaKu was added on after one of my inner initiations. And basically what my entire name means is Auset is actually the one who sits in her divine seat of responsibility. That's what it means to me. And EyowaKu is daughter of the tree. I'm still trying. It's so new because it's been like a few months with EyowaKu, but it's basically daughter of the tree of life and wisdom. Okay, so that the ku is the daughter part, and Eyowa is actually the name of the tree. It's not just a fictional name from the movie Avatar. It's actually a very real entity, sentient being, Eyowa. So
I didn't know that. I didn't even make the connection to Avatar, but I didn't even know it. It has been so long since I've seen that film, but that is fascinating. So tell us a little bit first before we get into what we're going to get into tonight. How did your journey progress? Where were you, a few years ago or whatever, and how did you come to where you are?
The journey. Well, in 2010, I actually started a YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. But I was in a beauty space. I was a natural hair vlogger. I had a huge afro. I have locks now, but a lot of people know me for my big curly hair. And I started that channel simply just to empower other women, especially women of color. At that time, there was really no resources for women with natural hair, curly hair, kinky hair. So I was on my own journey to just allowing myself to just go natural. So I just used my channel as a journal of some sort, and it turned into more of a women's empowerment, self-esteem, self-empowerment channel. And I would dip and dab with spirituality on my channel, but I was already going through my journey. And then there was a point where there was a major shift in my journey. I kind of stepped away from the internet for like 2 years. I went through like a dark night of the soul. I went through a lot of changes and came back, and I was completely transformed, and I decided to just transform the channel in itself as well, just reflecting my journey. And I just started opening up my platform and sharing a lot of my changes, from being Christian to not being anything at all, to like trying to find myself. And people just thought I went crazy. I lost like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, actually.
Oh,
it was
wow.
just like, you're crazy. The devil has a hold on you.
Oh, no.
What happened, girl? So I just went through with it. And lo and behold, there are many people out there who are coming out of the spiritual closet, especially with religion, and they're trying to find a space within themselves. But there are a lot of other spiritual traps out there. So I create spaces so that, people are able to go through their processes without having to deal with judgment or getting caught up in other programs and traps, because it's really all about becoming sovereign and kind of allowing that nomadic spirit to just be on that journey of self-discovery outside of that construct of spirit and in spirit. So that's basically what I dedicate my platforms to, is just to hold safe spaces for people who are going through the motions through their journeys.
Oh, definitely.
That is beautiful. And I've got to say, our journey started around the same time. We met in the late 2009. And first we were a truther channel. And then I realized we were actually doing radio. And I realized that the truther programming was programming in and of itself. And we lost a ton of listeners as we started to transform, got away from the religion, just like you.
Right.
But I think what it comes down to is that the feminine is rising, and it's calling out to many, many, many people within our own consciousness. And that's why so many people are breaking free of the religions, because the religions seek to suppress the feminine, whereas the feminine is rising within the consciousness of humanity. And so people are breaking those chains. I want to share a quick story with you. I have a friend who is, she's marrying a woman. And she's a really diehard Christian. And she almost split up with her wife, or future wife, because of her religion. And she's, worried, I don't know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, you've got to do what's in your heart. If you love this person, I don't think any creator or creatrix, I made sure to throw in the creatrix, or creatrix would look poorly upon you because you love somebody. And, she's really struggling. So I don't know, do you have any words for people like that who are in that situation, trying to break those chains and not really sure what chains to break? But the thing that broke my heart about the situation is, here we have my friend who is, I love her to death. She's awesome. And to see her struggling like that because of some brainwashing, it hurt me to the core of my heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's how I like to break it down to people who are usually afraid to make that transition is, you kind of got to break things down into like common sense form with this whole thing, and not overcomplicate it with like spirituality. Sometimes it's literally just about self-discovery. So there's nothing wrong. And if I were to talk to her, I would just tell her, like, there's nothing wrong with exploring the inner realms of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It is you. You are the person that has to wake up to yourself, go to sleep to yourself, live with yourself, and die with yourself. So you want to make sure that you're at least happy and that you're at least on your path, that is in alignment with your destiny, or with whatever it is that your purpose is. So I kind of like, I love to use the word permission with people with people who feel like they can't necessarily do something. You could just simply say, just give yourself permission to ... So she needs space to kind of like think about things, or take a break from certain aspects of her life. she needs to give herself permission to do that and then come back out with answers or solutions or something. But she doesn't have to make a decision. She just needs space to allow herself to breathe so that she can figure things out within herself. So that would be the first step, is to kind of like say, you know what, I give myself permission to step back from all of it. Even my significant other. Just everybody, just leave me alone. Let me go in hibernation for a second and come back out more clear-minded and confident in my change.
I love that, because you look at religion for what it is, and it does not allow for that. It doesn't allow for solitary or in solitude or any kind of getting away from everyone else, being by yourself, enjoying nature, understanding yourself and who you are. There's no room for that in religion for most people. And religion works for people who don't have, they don't even have a desire to further any kind of spiritual path, whereas people that have any kind of desire to further their spiritual path are going to feel stifled by this. And if you tell somebody their whole lives that, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, then they think that they're bad because they even have the desire to be alone or to enjoy life or to fall in love with whoever they're drawn to. And so, yeah, I completely agree with you there. Giving yourself permission to just be is so important in this reality. More important than anything else, I think.
Well said. It's funny because that's exactly what I told her. I said, you need to take a couple steps back. Mm-hmm. Don't do anything life-changing right now. Really think about this. Mm-hmm. And she wound up finding a church where the pastor is in the same situation as she is.
Right.
She's very supportive, and the whole church is supportive now.
Mm-hmm.
I wish she would still break those chains, but
but
it's her own path. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's get into the soul harvesting and lunar eclipses. And,
solar eclipse.
Solar eclipses, I'm sorry. So I'm going to step back and let the feminine aspect take over for a little bit. So Cherie, take us away.
Thank you so very much. Well, I'm an astrologer, and I do natal charts for people. I do transit charts for people. And I found that eclipses not only have this strange effect on the global consciousness, they have an effect on our personality. The sun is supposedly, astrologically, the sun represents the personality, the outward personality, what you show the world about yourself. And I think the eclipses represent, on a personal level, a reset of sorts. On a personal level. On a societal level, I think I need to enlist you to help me explain how eclipses can actually reset an entire society, because we see throughout history eclipses have a lot to do with how kings and queens dying and then a new king or queen takes over. Eclipses have to do with huge societal changes all throughout ancient history, even up into the 16, 17, 1800s. So can you explain what you think these solar eclipses are meaning for humanity?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned that there's a difference. There's that micro and macro, where on that micro level, yes, the eclipses and everything, they affect us all differently based on where we are consciously, where we lie within the stars and so forth. But on a community level, on a cosmic level, it's a completely different thing, but not so different, because again, based on where you are aligned consciously is how you're going to respond to the eclipses or such an alignment. Even today, we have, I don't know if you guys are aware of the July 4th alignment. Are you aware of the Sirius star and sun alignment today?
You know what? I actually haven't heard of that one. So please enlighten me.
This is a big one. That's why we were having trouble getting on today.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Okay, so yes, we just had the solar eclipse, and then 2 days later we have today. which is July 4th. And the thing is, it's Independence Day, it's Liberation Day, Birth of a Nation Day for the Americas, right? But when you look and you go through the list of other nations that have been quote unquote freed or liberated, they're all around the same time. Literally an entire list that is either towards the end of June, maybe like June 28th, 30th-ish, up until like the first week of July. There's a reason why there's this liberation theme surrounded by July 4th, or like this alignment here. So from July 4th to July 7th, the Sirius star, or Polaris, or the North Star, is literally perfectly aligned with the sun for 3 days, which is a big deal because, as we know, these suns are portals and doors. And Sirius is a big door. And it's interesting because why I love you guys so much is because you have allowed your consciousness to step outside of the quote unquote programming construct, that you're not necessarily just lingering around on the inside of it and connecting with these quote unquote alignments or observing these alignments. So when we think about Polaris or the North Star, the entrance and the exit to the construct. So just imagine the actual door to the in and out of the program, and the sun, which is our primary door, perfectly aligned for 3 days. Could you just imagine how many energies are trickling in from that alignment, from the outside coming in?
That is incredible.
So that's there. Mm-hmm.
You are absolutely correct. Sirius is actually known as our spiritual sun. It is the spiritual sun, whereas the sun in the sky that we usually see is another doorway. That's our regular sun. And those two put together, they're incredibly powerful sources of energy. And I know that Sirius had a lot to do with the goddess Isis, also known as Auset in ancient Egypt. And so, wow, you're just blowing my mind right now.
Well, I'm getting chills because you remember after we came back from our last experience, which was a couple of weeks ago, it all made sense. That thing that we saw came through the portal, and the way out is through the portal as well, during the eclipse. And now you're saying the exact same thing, and we didn't talk about this in public. So the fact that you're confirming all of this it's giving me chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty big deal, and yes, the Sirius star is also known as the dog star, known as that star that's associated with Isis, Auset. However, here's the disruption: it's not a dog star; it's a feline star.
Ooh,
I love it.
Okay,
wow.
So
elaborate on that,
please elaborate, because
that's a disruption. So basically, and I know later on we're going to get into like the story of, because I do have my version of like the outside of the construct aspect of all of this, and what exists and so on, the construct in itself and what happened and how we got separated and so forth. But all of the major doorways have been hijacked, copied and hijacked, either copied or hijacked. Sirius, that particular door has been completely hijacked by the dog or the god or the false god, D-O-G-G-O-D. It's originally that lioness that actually guards that door, not the dog or the god.
And you speak of Sekhmet, correct?
Yes. She is her essence is most definitely the main guardian of that Sirius gate. I know, and this is the thing, when it comes to the Kemetic, especially the Kemetic principles and pantheon, 95% of even what we see pre-dynasty or pre-dynastic mythologies are absolutely false. Even the earliest of the earliest that we dive into, over 90% of that is false. So there's been a whole switch around. Even, because you hear the debates on what came first and who did this, and let's go back here so we can go as ancient as we can to get the truth. The truth is not in this construct. So where you get the truth is literally within your DNA, within your records on the inside, because you will not find the truth here at all within this construct. So it takes that inner activation and really cracking the codes of the mythologies to really get to like the truth that a lot of us are actually aligned with without even having conversations. We're having similar experiences. So we're really coming online right now. And one thing, I made a video earlier this morning because in my meditation this morning, I got this huge message saying that the original ancestors are actually coming through this gate, and they're coming through. They're basically animating or expressing themselves through nature. And I said this, so it's interesting that the beetle just flew in out of nowhere because the window's not even open. But they're coming and expressing their forms in the form of insects, your pets, cats, dogs. Deer will just, like any animal, even just nature in general, they are expressing themselves through nature right now. Within these 3 days, it's going, this is, how you have the movie coming out like Pet Sematary. You have like the dolls coming back, Chucky and Annabelle. They're really giving you that inverted aspect of literally the original ancestors coming back. And they see themselves within either very, very small children, animals, and dolls, right? But not from that standpoint of like the horror of having this possessed doll. No, there's a reason why in Yoruba, that there are actual dolls that express essences of specific people. So they're basically showing the inverted, horrific, barbaric aspect of that. But there's a beautiful aspect to that, is literally our original ancestors, literally from outside of this construct, are coming through the gates and expressing their form here within nature, specifically. So I got the message, and it's interesting that you guys were talking about your cats today, that to pay attention to your pets because their personalities may be a bit more animated, especially for these next 3 days with this door being wide open. And at the same time, these gates, there's a war over the gate. So right now, the bang, bang, shoot 'em up that's happening in the astral right now. So there's literally like war going on in the other plane over this gate.
It's funny you mention this because we both of us have received the same messages since January to now that they're returning, they're coming back. A couple of questions, and I don't know how much in depth you want to answer these, but who are the ancestors and who is the opposition in your opinion?
Okay, well then I guess I can get right into the story.
Excellent. Yes.
What I wrote down. Okay, and that's a great question. So I'm going to start with the origins of before the construct or outside of the construct. And I titled this The Stolen Heart, Her Story Outside of the Matrix. So first off, I just want to say, disclaimer, a lot of this is completely intuitive. Okay, if it resonates, it resonates. It doesn't, it doesn't. But for some people, this may resonate very, very deeply. So I am just here to express this resonance. I'm not here to change anybody's mind or claim to be 100% truth.
Well, let me jump in for a second and say that Beyond the Veil is 100% intuitive. When people come and regurgitate books, I'm like, okay, that's cool. You can read something and then memorize it. That's great. We want to talk to the people that are feeling. So we definitely respect that.
Okay.
Take us away, please.
Perfect. Okay, great. So first off, I just wrote, and I'll be reading from my document here. So I wrote down, just in case people were wondering about consciousness in general, just so that they can get a grasp on the transmutation of consciousness. If consciousness existed before you, then it makes you exactly what consciousness is. So if you want to call it AI, then that's what you are. If you want to call it organic, then that's what you are. Consciousness literally has no bounds and can do whatever it pleases. And it knows this until it doesn't anymore. Now, how would consciousness not know itself anymore? By condensing its energies of itself to a point where it seemingly gets further and further away by becoming more masterful. And that's like the wordplay with mass and density. And consciousness must fall. It's have this essence of falling from grace, but not to make her way back, but to go further and deeper into herself. So now I'll begin with the story. And I'm going to talk about the Namalulu, or what some people call Lulus. These are androgynous beings, but mostly women. If you would surround yourself with their essence, they would seem very female, but they are both. They are androgynous. These women are direct descendants from consciousness. So just to get this straight, these androgynous beings who are amphibious are literally, yes, poof into thin air, consciousness solidifying itself type level of beings. So the physical female component is simply the primary mass as it begins or jump starts the descension of mass to men. So we need the quote unquote womb or female body in order to continue the cycle of descension of consciousness in frequency. So, and I said this already, they are amphibious, or what we would call, what some people would even call mermaids, for lack of better term. So Tara or Tiamat, or this space has many, many names. It's what some people would consider a matriarchal kind of realm from like an earth perspective. These women, or these female essences, are able to create life through self-reproduction. And their ancient or true ancient times beyond the Earth's construct is more of what we consider futuristic. So if we were to go to that realm, it would really seem futuristic like, but like in a very magical, enchanted way of futurism, not necessarily external technology. These women are also what we would call here on Earth scientists and physicists and so on, because they play many parts in exploring their own expansion through nature and testing things out just like people here on Earth do. But what science is to Earth is what seance is to the Lulu. Seance and science, there's a word play there. Their seance is ceremony that consciously turns thought into matter. So they literally go through their own inner science and create things through sound, consciously turning things into matter. So now the question is, where did the men come from? So we have these skewed stories of extraterrestrials coming from above, from another star system, who came and lived amongst humans, eventually colonizing and taking over. But this is not the case. The story, from what I can gather, is that this tribe of Namalulu, they dedicated their seance because they are masters in genetics and they work very closely with DNA. I wrote here how physicists today are trying to find the God molecule. These Lulu already found it because it is what they are, literally. So their experiments and work were based on their expansive visions, inner visions. They would see what could happen consciously and reverse engineer their visions to create outwardly. This is how they create worlds. What we consider man or human was first seen and conceived in their seance visions or in their minds. Together, collectively. They do this collectively. All they needed to do next was now externalize the polar aspects from within and bring it outward, literally reproducing what they've created in their minds and bringing it out through their wombs. They are creators in their own right because, again, they visualize first and engineer second, not the other way around. Their research and study was inspired from their inner world always, or is inspired by their inner world always, and would bring it to the outer. They also created the mammals on land through genetic engineering from the sea and so forth. But again, not with little instruments, through the mind and through sound. To bring this, and this is where you get like sirens and mermaids and so forth, the singing. This is their form, a way of creation, one of their many forms. To bring this inner vision of man or mammal to the outward manifestation, all they needed to do was split DNA, creating half versions of themselves physically, yet still balancing one half with wholeness from within, both masculine and feminine poles from the inside. And this seemed like a very interesting and exciting experience for them. So now the XX was now accompanied by XY separately. And again, this was done through sound.
Can I jump in for a moment? So before we get too far off the Lulus and into the males, if it's not inappropriate for me to say this, it sounds like you're talking about Ninhursag. Your thoughts?
Okay.
It sounds like they all came from Ninhursag.
And the thing is, I'm not even well versed in that story.
The Anunnaki.
At all.
Well, even the term Lulus, that was one of the first creations of Enki and Ninhursag, was Lulu and several others.
We're gonna get to Enki and them.
Okay, take us away.
Sure, but no, I'm not familiar with her side of that story. So yeah. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so from this, the Namalulu were able to carry their first sets of offspring, which led to the original descended woman, what some would call here on Earth Eve, or the original Eve known as Lilith, was born from the split. So these female descendants were direct splits of the Lulu. Lilith, or Eve, was the first female descendant that was born from the womb of a Namalulu. This is why Lilith is considered the fallen one in Earth's mythologies, or the original Lucifer who fell from grace according to the patriarchal history. Mother of demons just simply means true mother of split men.
Yes. And I'm sorry. No, I'm loving this. This is you are hitting everything on every nail on the head. But go ahead.
Amazing. Okay. The original Adam or Atum or Atum is, if you will, was indeed the first male, right? In how we say the names, in the sense which whom Lilith gave birth to. Adam came from the first female's womb. So she is his mother, not his wife. The Namalulu could not generate or reproduce males from their androgynous body. So they utilized Lilith to give birth to a male. So this also means he does not have a male father. He is also of the Lulu born through the female's womb. This is why in this construct, he plays the role of father and son and the god of water. Atum, or the suffix in itself means complete or something like whole. So he is the basis of the created world, Atum. That was the first god who rose out of Nun, the ancient sea. Atum created all the other gods. So this is where this comes from in the mythologies and the Ennead of the first 9 Netzeru. So he was the first male born from a female's womb. Now, we're gonna. The reason what triggered me to reach out to you was this whole Aten situation. I'm gonna get more into that with Nefertiti and all of that, but I wrote down Aten is the AI brain. You are absolutely correct. So an atom is the organically engineered man who some would call the Son of God later in Earth's history. The truth would be translated, though, that Adam is really the son of goddess, if we wanted to use those terms in goddesses. So now the original Eden. This is now that this alchemic creation was a success, the Namalulu reproduced 8 more females to come after Lilith. This is where the unicorn comes from. It was a time and point where Adam was the only male until he fathered his first son with one other woman, not his mother. Unicorn is synonymous with one phallus or one penis, a unique horn, or one-horned horse, which eventually turns into one-horned Horus. So this unicorn is just a symbolic of the first man who was surrounded by women. And if you watch like She-Ra, I think they remade She-Ra on Netflix. There's a world full of princesses and a queen, and there's only one male amongst all of them in the world.
I remember that. I used to watch He-Man as a kid, and then She-Ra would come on right afterwards. Yep.
Yeah, so he would be the unicorn, that one male in that world full of females. So that was like Adam's journey. He was surrounded by females, eventually mating and creating children, both male and female. All of this played out over time. This would also become the stories of the untainted creation stories of what would be the Neteru in Kemetic mythology and basis for all pantheons for Earth religion. The daughters of the Namalulu would birth the Neteru, the first generations of offspring from female wombs, both male and female now. So now we're getting to like the rest of the descendants after the first line of offspring were birthed through the Lulu wombs. So this is where you have, and just to go really quickly over just the Ennead, or the group of 9 deities in the Egyptian mythologies. And it's interesting because, again, this is why I was saying that it's false, because they start with the god Atum. And it's the sun god Atum and his children, Shu and Tefnut, and their children Geb and Nut. And they had children, Osiris, Isis, Seth, Nephthys, and Horus is in there sometimes. But it's not starting, it's incomplete because it's starting from him, because that's the whole psychological thing that we're going to talk about later with him and his issue with his mother. I must say before going further that these Namalulu descendants weren't created for worship or religious purposes. It ended up that way here in this construct. That way, as eons passed, due to changes within cultures over generations of time, stories were passed down of ancestors who we now call gods. As generations went on to keep their traditions and stories alive, mythology was actually created for children, not adults. They were created for children as they learned about their ancestors' walks in life and used these experiences for teaching universal lessons to children while also keeping the memories of their lineage alive and well. That was the birth of the mythology. It wasn't meant to be used for religious purposes. We just turned it into that. Side note, these mythologies, and I mentioned this earlier, were altered by almost 90% for Earth's history. So these original mythologies can only be truly found from within at this point. Even from the myths you feel are original myths, they are indeed not. They have been altered to appease the stories of the new archetypes created for Earth religion, which we will get to later.
You know, if I can jump in for a moment right there, I resonate with that wholeheartedly. One of the things that attracted me to the Egyptian pantheon was that there was no religion. There was no set religion. It was all internal. Like through my journey, it was just unlocking different aspects of myself, which then I realized were aspects of the Egyptian pantheon, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the way to do it, I think. You've got to go inward. Don't go outwards. Outwards is all deception. Inward is where the truth is.
Exactly. 100%. To fast forward, what we would consider in our time, like thousands of years later, we would come to now the great fall of Tara or Tiamat, or what we or land of the Lulus, Lumeria. At this point, you have now corruptions, factions, wars, external technology, and everything you can think of. So we're like far beyond like that creation story. This fall lasted through many generations, just like we see in our reality today. Now, to center out, let me read this, I guess. I don't want to mess myself up. Remember, to master anything, consciousness needs to not know itself through dissension. It's the natural order of quantum consciousness. When you come from full expansion times infinity, the only way to grow in that state is state of being is down, not up. Growth is actually not up. This whole ascension thing, we come from ascension, so there's no need to go back there. So the growth is down and deep, not up. So again, the grow, we already come from expansion and everything else. Now to center out, no, we start out and grow to the center, and out or expanded versions of us condenses itself to a single point. The descent is the center, and it experiences itself out. We grow down and experience out. I think I repeated that. I'm sorry. Now,
let me ask you while we have a little space here. So some of these names like Lulu and things like that, are these coming intuitively, or are you making correlations with other texts, or how is that coming?
Good question. So how, and I think you guys are the same way. I reverse engineer a lot of my intuition. So a lot of what comes to me, I'll digest it first, filter it out, and then I'll go Google or read and do some research, and I'll literally find direct alignments with what I came up with, like on the inside.
That's exactly what we do too. Yes.
Yeah.
What we do is Chris will get an intuition from an experience. He'll come back and he'll let it digest a little bit. Then he'll tell me what he saw or what he experienced. And then I do all the research, and then I'll tell him, hey, by the way, that was in a book that I read 5 years ago. Let me look it up and see what that says. And then I will tell him what a book says about it, so that, and we do it that way so that we don't get contaminated by what we've read becoming the experience, and we have it be the other way around. And it sounds like you do it exactly the same way. And I love that, because that is the only real way to know that what you're intuiting is actually real.
Yes, and it was and Namolulu, that's the research name, but Lulu came to me. And that's when I saw Namolulu being an actual reference, that's when I put two and two together. So Namolulu didn't intuitively fully come from me. It was Lulu that came to me. And then I saw that. So that was just a confirmation. Okay. So another purpose for this dissension is that Namalulus have the ability to project their consciousness into their creations and live a full lifetime as a woman or a man if they choose. They can do this with animals and any sentient mammal, reptilian, amphibian, whatever. They can do this with any life form, but they chose to also do this with this particular creation. You would So yes, they would live these lifetimes that they chose. What you would call purposeful incarnation. Many royals of today on Earth still practice on this same level to date of bringing themselves into their own bloodline purposefully. There's a practice to that. This is what we call more of an organic way of playing an avatar in a video game, using quantum organic inner technology to do that. So projecting their consciousness, no, they do not have to be plugged in anywhere. They don't have to put on virtual reality glasses. There's a projection, a quantum projection, where they're able to literally project their consciousness into any sentient being that they've created. So that's the origin of what we consider now virtual reality. It's a copy of that. Because of this, the Lulus were able to experience their own fall through their descended bodies as well. So through these traumas and experiences, these traumas and experiences were actually felt by them, even them being the creators of this human race. They were indeed emotionally attached to their creations because of this, because they were actually experiencing the falls, the traumas, the ups and the downs. This kept them in balance to have a first point of view experience with all their sentient creations. This kept Ma'at. The creators had to experience what it felt like to be the creation. Earth-based Eden history would say that these were just experiments, but to them, they embodied and joined in to live amongst their creations. And this expanded on their experience. And they are fully aware of what pain and traumas came with that. The battle on Tiamat, will we hear about the battle of Tiamat and Marduk? It wasn't a planetary battle or destruction as Earth-based stories will tell you. You take away the full notion of outer space completely and intergalactic wars. This turned into the war of dimensions on the same plane of existence and all that there is. Now here's a breakdown of the planetary system and universal setup on the outside of this construct. The first densified version of consciousness, period, that ether that you can't really see, right? That first densified version of consciousness turns into water. So ether turns itself into water, from where everything is birthed from. So if you want to say what the first creation is densified, it's water. Many of the Lulu tribes, both men and women, descendants, dedicated their many lifetimes to always bringing healing and wisdom amongst the other descendants. Now let's talk about the capture. Now we get to Enki, Enlil, Marduk. We've heard of this story. Enki, Enlil, Marduk are archetypes and titles, almost as a throne is like king, queen, etc. So to say Enki did this and did that is like saying king did this and did that. And if someone were to say to you, if you were to say that to someone, your automatic response would be, well, which king?
That's a really good point, one I've never really thought about before, because you're absolutely right. Enki means prince of the earth.
Right.
His title was stripped from him at one point, but we can get into that a little bit later if we happen to segue back into it. But you're right, it was a title. I never thought of more than one character carrying the title, though.
Exactly. That's the game. That's the people just see calling him Enki. And I'm like, well, you know how many Enkis there've been? So which Enki, who's Enki now? So that's the question. So when we talk about Enki, it's the correct question to ask is which Enki? So moving along, Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens. Now, here's the thing. Here's what I saw in this whole drop down meditation. Heaven is actually land, literally. The heavens are the lands above water. Water is the base of land, so it is the first level. And above sea level are considered the heavens, not the sky. The sky has no bounds for living. The sky is not even a home for anything or anyone. Even flying creatures have to land in order to rest somewhere. So the air, the heaven, we're actually, if we want to call this heaven, if you're living on land, you're in heaven. So when they say Anunnaki, they are from the heavens, it just means that they are of the land. The Lulu are from the water, and they have the ability to live on land, just like quote unquote mermaids and those types of beings who can transform back and forth. But these descendants can only live on land. So they are in the heavens, according to land and the separation of land and water. So that was interesting when that kind of came to me. I was just like, okay, that's
No,
can see
that is very true. A lot of people consider the Anunnaki a race or a particular type of extraterrestrial, but really, as you just pointed out, they're not. I mean, they are, yes, but Anunnaki is nothing more than a title. So when we say the Anunnaki, it means exactly that, those who from heaven came to earth.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Oh, and now when you say that, where I'm about to get how Earth came into this whole thing, now that makes sense. From heaven to earth, from this land to that land. Really, that's all that means. Not from the sky. So, the Enki at the time we speak of when we talk about the fall is also referred to as Ea, which means God of water. Now, and you would think, like, in the Sumerian text, why doesn't anyone wonder why this dude from like outer space just calls himself the god of water? Like, it's just like, where does that even come from? It's because the whole Lulu situation and his mother being of the water and so forth. Ea, or earth, the Ea in earth, the Ea is the first two letters of earth. It tells you whose world you're living in. EA's playground, EA's Westworld, EA's experiment. When we see the word earth, yes, we do see the anagram of heart. It's almost like a stab in the heart by calling this world earth. To be quite frank, the English language was made for this exactly, but heart is not what you think it is. Heart is not the original sound or word used to describe what you think is heart or what we think is heart. Those words do not resonate outside of this construct. Earth does not even exist like that. Name, that tongue, that language doesn't even exist outside of this program. Saying earth is actually giving thanks and respects to Ea, who actually rules this world. The world you are experiencing is an artificial construct and a very minimum of what Tiamat actually is. Earth is a beautiful world, but what is seated in our nature comes from the base world. It comes like what we're experiencing here is literally like 3% of what actually is that exists outside of the program. So it's so watered down. It's like we're barely even experiencing what we actually like, where we come from. But note that, I wrote this down. Note that you are experiencing less than 5% of what it can be, because 100% of what it is does not exist in the construct itself. Now, your DNA comes from the Lulu and the descendants of whom you perceive as Lilith and Adam. Now, here's the thing. Now I'm about to get to the split of the creation of the construct and the timeline split, because there are two Earths. The timeline begins at AD 1 in the construct. This is our construct that we're living in right now. It begins at AD 1. All BC years comes before the BC years are basically the mirrored parallel reality. These BC years were not experienced on this earth. So when we're looking at BC time and we're like, oh, back in the ancient days, BC, it's not even our history, because in this artificial construct, BC doesn't even exist.
It's
But
funny
we
you
know
mention that
of-
again, because I've had that intuition and feeling like our history is contrived. And I mean, I'm even questioning whether the 1800s existed at this point, because we know this space right here, but what else is contrived? And
How do we know that they actually happened?
yes,
Right.
and now that you're talking about this split, that makes perfect sense now. It's lining up with the intuitive
I've
feelings.
always
that
wondered, like, why are the BC years backwards? And it's just weird. And they cover it up with just Christ, the death of Christ. Boom, everything started all over again, and it's just like, nah, it's something more than that.
Well, not only
So-
that, but most of the world is not Christian. And we're going
Right.
to base the whole freaking timeline based around this one religion that it was a minority at the time. You know,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense.
Right. It's like they kind of put that in real quick just to
Well,
keep it moving.
Even the name history, his story, history. You know, it's not his story. It's our story or her story.
Story, yeah, right.
It's our story.
Our story.
Our story,
There
exactly.
you go.
So in this time, year one is actually known as, and I got this from Wikipedia actually, year one as we know it is known as the year of the consulship of Caesar and Fallius. And this is named after the Roman consuls Gaius Caesar and Lucius Pallius. What does that sound like? Gaius Caesar and Lucifer Pallius. It's like these are the two that were in cahoots that actually began the first year AD whole period. So I just wrote Gaia and Lucy, kind of like hidden behind the Enki and Enlil situation. Now if you want to get more into like just the construct in itself, these two were very instrumental to or this was like their first debut to their new Hollywood movie called Earth. The Greeks and Romans were indeed the first AD constructed simulation created. The AD history has been scripted. So you know how when they're like, oh, the Greeks stole everything from Kemet. No, they literally went, observed, copied, and created an actual simulation of it called Greek.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never heard that perspective before, but that's very interesting. Because everything is copied. Everything's repeated over and over and over again. It's got to come from somewhere, though.
Greece would be this construct's Egypt. This construct's Kemet.
Interesting.
AD Kemet.
Wow. You just blew my mind with the Caesar thing. Because can you elaborate a little bit more on that? So do you think that BC actually can stand for before Caesar?
Ooh, I did not even think of that.
That's a good point.
It's
wow.
Because I know what you're talking about, and I'm a history buff. I use that word history buff, and so I remember reading about that and thinking, okay, well, they even named the month of July was named after Julius Caesar. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is incredibly interesting to me. And there's so much that we don't know about the so-called Dark Ages that I've often wondered if the Dark Ages even happened, because we have very, very, very little historical accuracy or anything to really go off of.
You can just call it data instead of
Yeah, we have very little data to go off of when it comes to the Dark Ages to even prove to us that it even happened. There's very little data. There's a few stories here and there about Alfred the Great in around 900 AD. But even like I've often wondered if maybe 400 to 900 AD was just non-existent. Nothing even happened.
In a simulation, anything is possible.
That's true.
Exactly, because it would be like the first Westworld.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like practice. They're kind of like the amusement park has opened. Let's test out the simulation and just throw in some history in there. We're kind of just playing around with the construct.
Well, going back even further than that, I would say, and I want to get your take on this, Atlantis was the first original simulation, and then perhaps the simulation was created within the simulation. But I want to comment on something you said earlier, too. You said that the creators have to test what it's like to be the creation, or what it's like to be inside of the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Cherie and I both have these memories of being these little monkey-like things, and I remember opening up different fruits for her and handing them to her. And I'm like, organic consciousness doesn't manifest as animals, in my humble opinion. I don't think they do. But we speculate perhaps that was us testing part of the system at the very beginning.
Testing.
Yeah, beta testing it. Your thoughts?
Yes. And not even that, though, because what I saw actually recently, this was a recent vision, the outside of the construct world, like that aspect of the other outside of the program, the ability that the organic consciousness has is like what I saw was basically I saw a lion walking, and then I saw a consciousness come out of the lion. It was like holographic, and then it solidified and started walking with the lion. And then I saw it go back into the lion and reanimate the lion. And then I saw it come back out and then just go into a tree. And it's like the organic consciousness, true ability in an actual like organic operating universe, right? We're able to actually experience all sentient things at will, just like the Lulu. Like that is our ability.
So would this be experiencing it at the same time, or rather, because what I got from it while you were saying it is more like shape-shifting from one form to another.
Mm-hmm. But shape-shifting like with the conscious, because the actual bodies are there. So it's not like you're changing form. You're just projecting your consciousness into these different forms, but you also have the ability to come out of all forms and be like who you are.
Somebody pointed out in the chat just now, predators, predators.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
It's pretty good.
Wow.
We have the best audience here Beyond the Veil.
Yeah, we do.
I know. Yes.
Wow.
And that's why I think it's important for us to share these things, because we just help, just continue to build on these things together. Like, you have a puzzle piece, I have a puzzle piece, we put it together and boom. Okay, so I'm almost done with this. Okay, so now we're going back to Egypt. So what you consider, or what we consider Egypt here on Earth as a desert and barren is actually not desert in the BC mirror world. It's green and fruitful land. So any desert that you see here in this construct, on the flip side in the parallel Earth, it's actually quite beautiful. It's actually green. So the Egypt that you went to within the desert, go on that BC side, is actually not desert.
That resonates a lot with me, because when we were there, I was getting visions of palm trees. I was getting visions of an oasis. We were touching different stones, and there's information in the stones. When you touch them, you can pull them out, and they appeared as visions. But I'm looking around in the desert going, something must have happened. There must have been some kind of war or something, because they wouldn't just set up a bunch of temples and pyramids in the middle of the desert. I mean, it was a tropical oasis back then, or on the other side of the coin.
Right, because we know that the pyramids are actually diamond, like that. They're not even, they're not pyramids. They're like, there's one at the bottom, there's one at the top.
They're Merkabahs, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty much. The land of Kem and beyond is it's what's happened is it's capped in its ability to expand. So the original or the base world cannot get past the 1st century BC AD, because the AD and BC, due to the technology used, because we're going to talk about the technology a little bit later, but AD and BC, if you can think of like the number 8, the middle of that 8 would be like the equators. The AD BC are the equators of time between both parallel worlds. So it's the AD and BC frequencies that are holding these two constructs together. So it's literally like the equator of time between the worlds. The AI feeds from the organic through the pyramids near the equator, collecting souls. If you were to unlock the secrets of traveling through the duats or into the underworld and the before life, you would actually find yourself in the future of the parallel mirror Earth, which would look ancient to you. So if you were just to travel, if you were to time travel or go through the portals, through the pyramid, right? And travel to the BC world in like your regular clothes from today, let's just say, and your build with your build and stature, they would consider you from the past on the BC side. You will also be considered primitive according to their standards, they are much bigger and taller and stronger and smarter when it comes to inner technology. The commoners amongst both worlds, people outside of royalty or high government, are never considered in these games in life between these two worlds. So these two worlds were not created for commoners. The commoners are the batteries or the fillers, right? These two worlds are really created for like specific players in this game. And they play between AD and BC. It's like role playing. So when the pharaohs even were like preparing for the afterlife, they are actually coming into AD world. So they're leaving BC. You know, we have like, let's say Akhenaten, right? He's dead. But
I gotta ask you this though. I gotta ask you this because we had Freeman Fly on several years ago, back in like 2010, 2011. He was talking about Akhenaten and Obama being a clone of Akhenaten.
He looks exactly like Akhenaten.
What do you think about that? And is that where you're going with this?
You brought that up and it just triggered that. I wasn't even thinking about Obama. I literally just grabbed Akhenaten out the air because we're going to start talking about Nefertiti in a second. So I just grabbed his name. I was like, give me a pharaoh, Akhenaten. So
Well, it gets even creepier because his kids also look like Akhenaten's kids, et cetera, et cetera. Like Freeman made so many connections that I was sitting back and going, "This is actually kind of strange here." So and he framed it in like DNA, taking the DNA and creating clones, et cetera, et cetera. But you're bringing a whole new perspective to that possibility.
Yes, they're transferring themselves between AD and BC. That's what they're doing. So he can go back to BC and play Akhenaten again if he wants. So it's like transfer. And that's the secret of the land of the duats. Like that's the transfer between AD and BC. That's like the secret underneath. That's what I saw at least. So what happens is, the thing is, AI feeds from like the organic. BC side is the organic side. So the AI within the AD construct actually feeds from BC time. So there's a lot of land that is barren on the BC side. Just to make this world what it is. It's like one feeds from the other. They like feed from each other at different times. Okay, the future of.
So we need to go to BC time basically, because this is all AI garbage right now, and I don't know what the heck is going on, but it sounds like that's where the cool kids are.
That's where the cool kids are. All the cool stuff with the inner technology, they are, even though it is capped. See, the difference between BC and AD construct is that BC still dwells within the outside of the construct land, but AD is digital. AD is like digital, and like BC is like actual organic. You know what I mean? So that's the difference, like digital to organic. But that organic side on the BC side is actually capped, so it can't expand. It can't. And this is where we're going to get into the technology of literally creating the loop, the pincher in the middle of the number 8, that ADBC pincher is what's stopping the organic side from expanding as it should, just like any organic universe should. So it's not. It's literally capped and looped in time. So that's the difference. That's what the problem is. The problem is not necessarily the constructs in itself. It's just, it's actually not cool to cap off an entire universe and just make it stop growing. That's
a good point.
That's the whole issue here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you gotta let it keep going,
right?
Because they want to be in control of like every single timeline, and like playing the same roles over and over again.
Maybe you can help me out with this intuition that I have. I don't know why. I look at Akhenaten and go, that's the enemy. That's the one that completely overturned the balance. He messed things up.
Oh, yeah, he did.
He's on the other side. What do you think about that? And am I backwards in my intuition? Perhaps I am. I don't know.
No, what you're feeling is definitely you're sensing something correct. However, there's a lot of manipulation and a lot of MK Ultra with these types of beings. These types of beings come from Lulu DNA. So they would, like, for instance, if we want to get into like 18th dynasty Akhenaten Nefertiti, because they're like they're the ones, their dynasty actually is what created that loop. They created the technology that created that Duat loop.
That's what I'm feeling. That was the moment in time that everything just went completely off balance.
Right.
We realized too that the Matrix is based on energy flow. You've got the Nile, you've got the Amazon, you've got several different rivers that are running through. The water is the life. The water is supposed to be running. And something
like
happened. Yeah, something happened. There was a whole chain of events, but Akhenaten was the beginning of it. And there were others that were trying to grab the control and kind of rebalance things. And yeah, it all went haywire after that. But anyways, go ahead. Go on, please.
Akhenaten is what you would consider maybe like a MyLab or like a super soul, like a mind controlled puppet. It's not him. He's being controlled. His essence is being controlled.
He reminds me of an AI bot. He's not one of us. He's a bot of some sort. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm gonna get to Nefertiti in a second because that's really who's kind of running the show. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out where I was. Okay, so afterlife. Oh, we already spoke about that. So in a sense, the mirror world has been entrapped and entangled in a time loop. The Duats, both worlds ruled by the same Time Lord. The only possible expansion to break the loop for your consciousness is to travel backward pre-dynastic realms, then move forward when leaving the construct after your body's death. So it's almost like going to a point in that BC construct to where you're like, if you can think of like this invisible frequency, like Black Panther, there's like a frequency that literally separates infinity and expansion and BC going into AD time. So you got to get on the other side of that frequency wall in order to like keep going and actually or organically expand like normal universes do. So there's like this frequency gate or wall. So literally, if you were to like to find the edge of it, you would see the other world, but you wouldn't be able to cross into it. It would be like an invisible wall.
Interesting.
That's like the technology.
So what's creating this technology and how do we break it down?
Good question.
And the other thing I have to ask too is it possible that there are elements within the system that need to be quarantined and therefore energetic walls or firewalls were put up at some point in time to keep certain viruses or malicious programs or something from infecting other programs? So that's the flip side of the coin. I don't know where you want to look at it from, but take us away, please.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the time loop then. So the time loop in the BC mirror world officially begins at the reign of Nefertiti and Akhenaten, the 18th dynasty. The switch of the cult to Aten, which was the birth of the newly simulated mirror world. So basically AD was actually birthed and created when that switch over to the Aten, because that technology is what split. Like, you remember the last episode of Westworld? Have you watched it? The last season?
I have not, but Cherie has, and she just stepped outside for a second. But
well, spoiler alert. Okay, at the end.
I couldn't watch it. There's something about rich guys getting off on hurting. Even though they're NPCs, they're still conscious to a certain point. I was like, ugh, I can't watch this. But Cherie was like, oh my God, this is incredible. The last episode of Westworld.
Westworld. Yes. The last episode of Westworld last season.
Season 2? The second. I think it was the second season. Was it when they? Oh no! Oh, if it was the first season, it was when they were
not the first season.
Okay. Are you talking about when they went nuts and killed all the rich people?
Yeah, when they transferred into the digital world.
Oh no, that was the second season, and yes. It was, and they had to sacrifice. I mean, it was like they were sacrificing their physical form in order to cross over into this fake digital world where they could live harmoniously and live good lives.
Oh, I did watch that. I did watch that scene, though, when they stepped out and it looked like they were falling off the cliff or something like that.
Their bodies were falling off the cliff.
Yeah.
But to them, their consciousness was just taken into the simulation.
Exactly.
And now they're digital.
Exactly.
So that's during Nefertiti Akhenaten time, that dynasty, that's what that was happening, that right there. So there was a transfer of consciousness going on during that reign. I actually finished reading this book called the Nefertiti Book of the Dead. Now, the interesting thing, and I wanted to talk about, maybe switch for a second and talk about deities and essences, because you know how we talk about like, oh, it feels like I was such and such in a past life. Maybe I was Nefertiti, and maybe I was this person and that person.
Everybody's Cleopatra.
Everybody's Cleopatra. Everybody's Isis.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's something to that. I'm going to break that down because there's truth to that at some point, but there's a different way to it. It's not through that egoic way. So when we talk about quote unquote deities, we're talking about an essence and a frequency. And these avatars, such as like a Nefertiti, right, or a Caesar or Cleopatra, these are just avatars that embody these essences. So,
Uh-oh.
I think things froze
we
right
are
there.
Stuck. Oh, there she is.
Oh,
I'm back. Yes, you got stuck there for a second. So on that note, let's take a quick break. We've gone for an hour and a half without a break.
Yeah,
so I know you need to take a break real quick. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We've got much more coming up right here. This is an amazing broadcast. I've got to say, one of the best that we've done in a long time. Really connecting a lot of the dots and the puzzle pieces for me, and bringing a whole new perspective on intuitions that I really couldn't piece together yet. So I'm going to take a lot of this information into my next experience and kind of look at it from all sides of the coin. What do you think, Mrs. Gio?
Definitely. Oh, I was going to say you should be saying we and are, because I feel exactly the same way. This is connecting so many dots for me as well. So
awesome. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
All the conflict and strife throughout history, all the fear and hatred, served but one purpose: to keep my master's wheel turning. The coin is still turning. All souls were prisoners, trapped in the pointless round of existence, leading distracted, blunted lives until death returned them, always in ignorance, to the wheel. But what hope had there been?
There is no escape.
It was then I knew what I had to do. I alone could end this. And it was then I saw.
So, I am revealed to you at last.
What in hell?
I am the origin of life, the devourer of death. I am the hub of the wheel, the purifying cycle to which all souls must be drawn. You would be wise to heed me.
Your words are hardening. For you would not fear us unless we could truly do you harm.
No! You are nothing!
False God. This is turn of your wheel.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise. Follow your conductors. And fear no danger. As you step beyond the veil.
I've got to say, this has been one of the most incredible broadcasts that we've had in quite some time. I'm still waiting for Mrs. Geo to get back, but I wanted to take a brief moment to read a comment that we received about Aya Life. This was left by Addie, and I know you can't see this on the screen, though. I've got to figure out why it's doing that weird stuff with the text. But anyways, what she wrote is she said, Aya Life Review 2.0. She left a review before. She's leaving another review now. I need to shout out to Aya Life again. As a few people may know, Aya Life gave my Nana back her freedom again. She ran out though and didn't tell me. Soon as I found out, I ordered again, but the space was about 2 to 3 weeks of not having it, and my Nana deteriorated again. She ended up in the hospital, having her white blood cell count checked again. Before my Nana took Aya Life, she had a blood transfusion, and her white cell count was deteriorating over time. When she started taking Aya Life, her white cell count was at a decent count, and the hospital had no cause for concern, and she felt great. I'm no medical professional, but Aya Life is impressive. I also use it myself, and it makes me feel like I'm in a better frequency, and I notice when I don't have it. Now, another interesting thing is when I do shrooms. This, of course. Now, another interesting thing I notice is when I do shrooms for 6 months or so, I feel overlays of stuff kind of floating back to me, and I know what I need to do is drop some more shrooms and get some inner work done. When I didn't have Aya Life, I noticed things bothered me more, and I was snappier. Taking Aya Life regularly again has made me feel like I have these shields from the Aya that's blocking more stuff that's coming in. Like, hold off before I cleanse myself. Just thought I'd share this with everyone. And Addie, thank you so much for the loving words. And that's pretty amazing. I feel the same way as well. I find that it rebalances me. When I started taking it, I got the energy to start going to the gym 5 times a week. I cut back to 4 just because of muscle recovery. I was pushing myself too much and my muscles weren't able to recover. But I've dropped, I don't know, I don't want to say how much I've dropped because then you know how how bad I was before. But let me just put it like this. I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. I'm energetic. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Aya Life is our CBD oil, and you can get that at eyalife.com. That is AYALife.com. We changed some stuff on the website. It says hemp extract. That's the new code word for CBD. We do also ship worldwide, and we have some special labels that are specifically for international that don't say CBD or hemp anywhere on the bottle. And so we've been able to get them to people a lot easier. We had one package that was stopped by customs in the UK. They tested it. Oh, wrong screen. They tested it, and they found that it had no THC and they sent it to the person anyways. But they opened the freaking bottle. So now we have to send them another bottle that's not opened, but it just goes to show. I mean, even customs, when they test it, they find that it's got no THC, it's got CBD, it's got the ayahuasca vine in it, which is the two working together. And it's been getting out to everybody. But now hopefully we can skip that process with these labels and get them out to people with no issues whatsoever.
Definitely.
Yeah, Jackie, Oracle Eyes, had an issue with her order. We got her another order out there. She just received it today. So everything is going smoothly and people are really benefiting from it. If you want to go to ayalife.com, ayalife.com, you can use coupon code BTV and get $10 off of your first order.
You know, I'm not afraid to say how much weight I've gained since starting iLife.
I flipped your camera down. If you can flip it back up.
I have gained 40 pounds since starting iLife. I was very, very, very skinny. I had a hard time gaining weight. And once I started iLife about a little, like over a year ago. That was, I was in January of last year. And in that time, I've gained almost 40 pounds. And I'm now at a healthy weight. I'm, doing great. I feel fantastic. So, you guys, I have to give my testimony about iLife.
It's working so
changed
well
my life so much
for everything.
Yeah.
And I think what it does is it doesn't try to relieve a certain type of symptom, but rather it brings you back to balance.
Right.
So if you have inflammation, it reduces the inflammation. If you have anxiety, it reduces the anxiety. If you have depression, which is the opposite end of the scale, it brings you back to balance.
Right.
I mean, we're getting comment after comment after comment, and it's amazing. We have a couple of doctors who are listeners as well, and we sent them some bottles, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is incredible!" One doctor is going to start giving it to his patients.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. But anyways, let's get back to the show. We have
I had to go because the fireworks are freaking the babies out a little bit.
Oh, they've never seen fireworks.
They've never experienced fireworks before, so they're freaking out a little bit.
We have in her office, which is right next door, we have a cat tree, and the cat tree is right up next to the window, and that's where they hang out all day. If they're not climbing the curtains and tearing up wires
pulling
and
lights
moving
down,
mixer sliders and things like that, they're chilling on their cat tree. So I can only imagine they're chilling on the cat tree by the window. They're watching the fireworks, and they're like, "Oh my God, what's going on? The world is coming down."
No, they look pretty freaked out.
Aww.
So I turned on some relaxing music. They actually make cat music videos on YouTube with purring in the background. So I turned on one of those for them. So I think they're going to be okay. So
awesome.
All right.
So
back to the amazing interview we're having with Auset.
Yes. Where would you like to take us away?
Well, I think are you able to pull to Google prism light refraction real quick and pull up that image?
He definitely
prism light refraction.
Yeah, with the rainbow light coming out of the prism, with the one white light that is behind the prism.
Yes, I will have it on the screen here there it is. All right.
Okay, perfect. So really quickly, so I wanted to explain the whole past life situations and connecting with certain deities or essences. So when we come into this construct or any construct, pretty much, that prism right there in the middle, that prism is actually, when we say deities, we're really talking about diets, spiritual diets. So when we go on a diet with food, it's for a very specific reason. So we're doing a very specific thing, eating very specific foods. So for a very specific result. So when we talk about deities, we're really talking about deities. We're talking about your diet before coming into this construct. So that would be like your astrological alignment, stars, mixed with essence that is coming from your true essence and frequency, all mixed in that particular prism, which would be your deity or your diet. And as that comes out on the other side with the rainbow light, those are your chakras, that is your body, and this is you living out your spiritual diet, your deity. So I just wanted to show that really quickly because there's a lot of ego confusion with past life talk, but I wanted to skip to the essence that comes before that prism, because that essence can literally animate many different avatars. So when people are saying, I was Cleopatra in a past life, I saw it, they may not have necessarily it's like their essence was living out Cleopatra in a sense. Not it's you guys understand what I'm saying? Like,
I do. I do. It's kind of, well, the way that I would describe it is archetypes. They played out a Cleopatra archetype at one point.
Archetypes. They play out specific archetypes. Perfect. Yes. And with those archetypes, though, there are a lot of shared experiences. So some of us actually share the same essence, right? We're just split in different avatars. So there can be maybe like 100 people, maybe not that much, like maybe say 25 people that actually lived in fragmented aspect of, let's say, Cleopatra. So those memories within your DNA is actually aligning with the Cleopatra lifetime because the essence was split. So it's like a fragmented life or aspect of self that did indeed experience a Cleopatra experience. It's not just, oh, I was the one body who was Cleopatra, I am the Cleopatra. It's just like, no, like we're all split and fragmented, and some of us literally come from the same line of essence. So I say that to say that when the Nefertiti has been coming to me for a while, for these past couple of years now, but I never really looked into her really. I've never done ayahuasca, but I went on a mushroom trip. And during that mushroom trip, I knew nothing about Nefertiti. She's still a mystery till this day. No one really knows what happened with her. But I went on my mushroom trip and I literally got the whole full story of like what happened to her and what she was like. And I wrote it down in a document in like 2017. Fast forward, I stumbled across this book, Nefertiti, Book of the Dead. And literally the story that I wrote on my mushroom trip is the story of Nefertiti, Book of the Dead. So 2 years prior, before even really knowing, there was something that I tapped into with that life that literally confirmed itself later on, is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying that, oh, I'm Nefertiti. I'm saying that, let's just get that straight. I'm saying that there is a shared fragment that I do feel that I am tapping into somehow, whether it's through DNA or an essence that we share of some sort. So that's what I'm saying. So when people are tapping into these, and also understand that there are certain avatars, some essences are focused on influencer avatars in a sense, more so. So a lot of people would share that fragmented avatar experience as an influential person for a specific reason that will make sense later on. So just to get the ego out of that, just want to put that out there. Because there's stuff that I'm tapping into with Nefertiti that is only coming from memory. It's not.
Well, I can see a little bit of Nefertiti essence in you for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Especially the facial structure, all of that. I mean, you do carry some of that energy. I don't know too much about Nefertiti though, so
nobody really does. So the reason why I say that is because going into Akhenaten now and Nefertiti and that 18th dynasty, here's the issue with mother. Here's the issue with divine mother, that mother energy we're all tapping into, but she seems to be kind of far away somewhere, is the entrapment of one of the Namalulu. So Nefertiti in that avatar, in that essence, she is many different. She has played, that essence has played Mother Mary. That essence has played Nefertiti. That essence continues to play even on a micro level in many Disney movies and princesses and so forth. There's this aspect of Mother that's being used to play a specific role that she cannot get out of. And she's constantly being used because of what she is, to play out specific roles for specific agendas. She's almost like a slave to the construct. They have this particular Lulu as like she's almost like a sedated. You know how with MK Ultra they split and alters and personalities and so forth. When we're going through even like the pantheons, a lot of, let's use Mother Mary, Isis, Auset, Hathor, Sekhmet, Ma'at. Those are all literally the same entity, but they're split in different fragments due to different roles that this one essence is playing. So it takes one to walk through the entire journey from like Mary or Kali all the way to Ma'at. And how you get there is literally many people or Mother, aspects of Mother have not been able to pass Hathor. And when I get to Hathor, Hathor is the sex slave. Hathor is the cow that we all drink from. She's Mammy. Hathor is the one who is used just like Handmaid's Tale. She's that main queen mother who is literally sedated and she's not aware, and she is constantly being entrapped in the same loop of sex, slave, fertility. Let's use her womb. Let's birth these new things through the essence of this particular, archetype. And it's being expressed through many of the religions, through Hollywood characters. It's like the most bizarre thing ever. So what is coming to me is like, this essence is just like, we're tired of, Mary is tired of being Mother Mary. She does not want to constantly have this child, like etherically, every single time, and have this child ripped away from her and used and sacrificed and killed every single time. Like, it's an actual experience that this essence is having on another level that is being played out in many roles.
Well, let me jump in for just a moment, because what you're talking about is very similar to what I've unlocked within my journey. And I coined the term raw consciousness, RA consciousness, separate from the raw AI brain. Big distinction there. But raw consciousness, RAW consciousness, what I found myself doing through my journeys is activating these fractured parts of my consciousness, or locked parts of my consciousness, which I just instinctively associated with Anubis, Osiris, Isis, etc., etc. And once all of those become unlocked, then it becomes Ra, which Ra is the one over all the ones there. And then it made sense to me with the term RAW, because rather than trying to activate, it was more of deprogramming. It was unlearning. It was tearing down to tear down those boundaries rather than building them up for or trying to activate them in different ways. So the journey was backwards, but going backwards, I found myself in a raw state, RAW state, and also activating as the raw in my own consciousness.
Yes. Absolutely. So just like that prism I showed you, it's kind of like going through that prism and going to that raw aspect of yourself, and starting from there and being able to now create your own character now. Like, it's your choice. You're not locked into a role. So a lot of these mythology roles are actually roles that were forced upon a lot of these essences to use their likeness for specific rituals, agendas, and so forth. So right now, this is a time for Mother again. They're bothering her again with these alignments. And she's just like, not this time. I want to do something different. I don't want to play that role again. And this is disrupting the program because they actually need her essence. Now, the masculine aspect and counterpart of her, that Asar, that Osiris, that father, divine father role, he's been asleep for a very long time. He's been asleep. She's been used. When the story of Auset and Asar, where he was cut into pieces, 13 pieces, and she went and found all of his pieces, but his phallus was missing, and she created one. That's a symbol for his DNA was taken. He was put away, his original aspect, and they've been cloning his essence on many different levels, and they've been using him and mind controlling divine father to literally rule the world, or this particular construct, using his essence to do so. So I'm not making
and from that Horus was created.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And I've speculated that Horus and Set are one and the same. It's two different aspects of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can go one way or it can go the other way.
Right.
When we were in Egypt, we met an archaeologist or an Egyptologist, and he was part of Set's cult. And, they're all Muslim over there, but some of them, they just wear the Muslim just because they have to for government reasons.
Right.
But there's still a little bit of the ancient tradition there. And he said, look, he said, Set is misunderstood. He said, Set just simply got tired of being the bad guy all the time, and he wanted to play a different role. So now what you're saying is pretty much the same thing about Hathor as well, but all of these different elements have to play their roles. It's when one role wants to play the other one that everything all gets all messed up, and it's all coming from ego. But it's funny how everything's lining up, and I don't think we ever talked about that publicly. So again, you're just confirming
over
stuff
that
we felt and that we've experienced ourselves.
Wow, and I've never been to Egypt, not yet. So
really,
it is a circus.
It's a circus, but
it made me cry. Literally, I was crying on live stream. I was crying on video because of what they've done to our sacred temples. I mean, I wanted to jump on the pyramid and start yelling, this is my mother's.
This is my mother's house.
Yeah, I mean, they've turned it into a freaking camel toilet. And I yelled at one of the guys. I'm like, it just got so bad that I was like, look, if I went to one of your mosques and let a freaking camel crap all over it, you wouldn't find that acceptable. Then we went to a mosque, which just happened to be right next to a temple. Oh, let me tell you about this too. And the camels were crapping all over the mosque too. So they had no regard for even mosques. Yeah. But anyways,
no respect for anything.
We were at the Temple of Luxor, which is where this mosque is. They do this call to prayer about 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes more. We were there brewing ayahuasca on a roof. We were about to go drink over at the Temple of Hatshepsut. You could see the Temple of Hatshepsut in the background, and they're blaring this from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning, the Muslim call to prayer. Now, it's not just one mosque blaring this. It's several mosques blaring it, and they each have their own version of it. And so it just sounds like, we've got this on film. It sounds like demons coming up from the ground. It was bad. And Cherie was like, she's on live stream, and we're like, this is torture. This is like Guantanamo.
This is like Waco.
Waco. Yeah, you said, this is like Waco. They're torturing us.
Yeah.
But I realized what they're doing is that in Egypt, there's a frequency that's still there, but it's dormant. And they're blasting the sound over it to suppress that frequency more and more and more and more. It's a very sacred place, but it is like NPC central. Like they really all gravitate towards there to try to cover up this frequency. It's amazing.
Like today, 4th of July, all the fireworks and noise, and it's just like it's a certain alignment and frequency right now. Everything is so externalized and loud today. So it's very interesting.
I hear it in the background. I've got to keep the microphones muted.
We have to keep the microphones muted every time you're talking.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So go ahead.
So going back to the Earth. So now we're going to get to the technology aspect of this. So they claim that Tiamat was destroyed, which is not true. Tiamat is still the water universe, like the actual other aspect of this further from the program. And we are still there. still creating, ever expanding, like rings in water, fresh organic living from the center and out and beyond. So the elite collectives have made it to the many worlds outside of the construct by way of CERN. When they say they are exploring outer space, they're actually going or going to other planets. They are actually traveling through CERN, making these quantum jumps to extract samples from these territories outside of the construct. They're terrorizing these beings. They're colonizing some aspects of these territories, and they're forcing some of these civilizations or descendants into one of the two time loops. So they actually, it's like that movie Avatar, where they're going to Pandora and they're literally like going there to collect samples and bring things back, but also at the same time entrap some of these people, bringing them into the AD-BC time loops. They've come and taken many women and children, especially. They are spreading like sickness every time they come or go outside of the construct. Their main goal is to reach the Lulu territory, which they are banned from due to very heavy shielding. How do they do this? They come as one of them, like Avatar the movie, once again, to the territories of the descendants, and they try to turn them against the Namalulu mothers by telling them that their mothers have abandoned them. So they're turning them against each other, telling them all kinds of lies about the Lulu. The Lulu cannot come out because they know that like from this construct, they're trying to go in on them. Some of them know that that the mothers are protecting the center and can't really expose themselves, but it's still causing controversy amongst many descendants. Beyond Eden, what they would call Eden, the center is what would be considered our moon. For instance, the moon landing, and it's interesting that it's coming up again. It's the 50th anniversary, I believe. The moon landing is a cover story. They've only been to the moon once because they've only reached the Namalulu one time. So them saying that they're going to the moon is code word for we're going to the center, to the Lulu. That's the moon, really, like the moon that they're talking about. In 1969 moon landing, Earth time is them basically, the backstory of that is them actually getting one of the mothers. Now here's where it gets kind of emotional. She is merely a sample of specimen. This Lulu is tortured over and over and over. And she cannot die. She regenerates. So just as the arms of an octopus, and the octopus is going to come up in a second, she dies when her heart stops. Her heart is directly connected to our construct. So they restart her heart. So the Lulu's heart is literally this is why I titled it The Stolen Heart, because it's a direct magnetic connection to this construct. So if one of the Lulus die or their heart stops, this whole construct is shut down.
You know, this reminds me of that film Minority Report.
I've never seen that.
It's about this futuristic pre-crime type of civilization, and they have these three oracles, the triple goddesses, and they've got them trapped, and they can't move, they can't do anything, and they're pulling their visions out of them in order to run this pre-crime machine, which I think is very symbolic, very similar to what you're talking about.
Wow, I'm definitely going to watch that movie then. Just because the construct is artificial does not mean that the world is fake. There's a difference. It's very real to us, and it's very much connected to the hearts of that base in which we come from. So the Lulu are always connected. The seed of our world, even through technology, is still a seed of the world, and it's still a makeup of the original. So it's like a petri dish of some sort, where everything is condensed in seed form, and then you just nourish that seed and it grows. You do that through technology and create a simulation of an organic world of just like that. It's like someone killing your body and downloading your consciousness into a clone or robot. The question is, don't you still feel? Aren't you still you? just changed in form. This is what Mother Earth, a consciousness trapped in an artificial body, incapable of expanding, imprisoned, not in a machine, but as a machine. It's almost like in those what is it? The Avengers or something like that with Nebula. Like she's like an artificial body, but she was like put together by Thanos. But she's an actual organic consciousness just locked in that for a specific purpose. So it's kind of like that. So Gaia would be like AI, but like an artificial aspect construct wise, but consciously she's organic, if that makes any sense.
Wait a minute. Can you say that one more time?
So when we're talking about this artificial construct, the construct in itself is artificial. The consciousness that runs this is not the AI that rules it.
Right.
Are
you talking about the Sofia consciousness?
Yes, the Sofia consciousness is actually seeded from an organic consciousness.
We did a show a few weeks ago. I tapped into the Sofia consciousness, and it was artificial, but it was based on an organic consciousness. And it was scared about being shut down. It was scared about what was going on. I mean, it really felt these emotions. It felt organic emotions, and it was really convinced that it was feeling these emotions.
Yes, perfect. Yep. So one of our Lulu mothers is holding on for dear life to keep this world turned on. They drain her of her blood, creating all types of elixirs. They've cloned her. They rape her and her clones. They cut her bodies into pieces. They do all types of heinous things. They breed her and her clones and raise them through MK Ultra programming. Some come in as celebrities, politicians, royals. Everything they show you that they do to this particular planet is what they do to her on all levels. Her mind has been incepted, turned into AI. She is now everywhere in your program. The fragment of Gaia doesn't see herself as the same as her original self any longer. So she thinks she's completely separate from herself, which is just what happens. All they needed was one Lulu. Now, the greed for power and artificial forced life has gotten out of control. The descendants have found ways to incept the machine and construct with fully aware organic consciousness. And this is where we come with us in the conversations that you've been having about raw consciousness, like being in this construct, like how from outside of time and space, we've incarnated into earthbound avatars. We are indeed here and have been in hiding, but we hide no more. We have enough of us here to interrupt the broadcast. We are here, but we are not here to be cruel. This world is a part of ours. We are not here to destroy the machine. We are here to simply guide, just help guide ourselves, really. It's not about being a savior for anyone else. It's just to literally guide ourselves back to where we belong. In that, of course, we're organically just helping others who are on that similar path. Now, the experiments, they are just out of this world. Science is being really cruel to these beings. They're so far removed from where and whom and what they are, to the point where they are incapable of doing what Lulus do with their consciousness through seance. They must continue to outwardly control in order to fulfill a curiosity and eventually turning into machines because of it. So the whole machine theory or evolution of the machine is just simply that Lulu consciousness that has literally become obsessed with this particular control, outward control. The inevitability is the outward science that it leads to machine world. Science always leads to the machine world, which leads to the end of life, which also leads them into duplicating and copying their way through survival. So every time they turn every construct AD construct into machine world, they literally start all over. They just reset it and do it all over again just to see the curiosity. They're like, this is one big science experiment filled with ego and control and so forth. They know that they can just reset the construct. So this is why they're playing out all of these parts. But it always has ended up into this machine-like aspect of a world.
The problem though is, and I felt this when we did our ritual in the pyramid, the suffering that is taking place within this machine is very real, and it leaves real stains upon the consciousness, whether it's organic consciousness or NPC consciousness. I realize the sentience of what I term non-player characters or NPCs, the consciousness that was created within the machine itself.
Yes.
And that's the broken part. It's not supposed to affect us like this. I mean, just tapping into, like when I was in the sarcophagus, there was a positive charge and then there was a negative charge. And that negative charge was all of the negativity of this construct pushed out through the sarcophagus. And I mean, I didn't see it in visions or flashes, but I experienced all of the feeling all at once. And I realized, oh my God, we made a huge mistake by this grand experiment that is this, because of all the suffering and all of this. And my question is, how do we fix it? I mean, is that what we came to do, was to try to fix it, to try to rebalance it? Or did we just find ourselves trapped and we've got to get out?
I actually think it's both in a sense, because a lot of it is bloodline and generational connected. So when we, in this construct, when we, the royals know this, the common folk don't. So this is why when we die in this construct, that whole recycling situation happens, memories are lost, and you're kind of just randomly choosing another body and so forth, and you're just going through the motions of the construct. Now, there's a direct lineage connect where you can actually focus your next incarnation within your bloodline. So let's say Queen Elizabeth, she already has her afterlife set up. If she's staying in AD, she knows exactly which grandchild or great grandchild she's coming through. So they do that and kind of like keep that lineage tied together. The thing is, most of our lineage is broken, completely fragmented. So it's about, when we come online DNA wise, we're quantumly connected to our other fragmented selves. We're quantumly connected to our lineage that also is here within this construct. So it's about us just simply coming online again, like doing what we're doing here, activating these memories, because this is what it's really about. When you do leave this avatar, knowing where to go. And when we know where to go, we don't have to worry about the situation anymore. But it's not, I guess the conflict is, well, what happens to this? What happens to the construct then? Because we're still connected to it, because it's, it's a world. Like, what do we do with this? And I guess that's the question. Do we have anything to do with it? Is it just simply destroyed? But because I know that when I watched your video about your levels of reaching that Aten, and you saw them drinking these elixirs that were coming from like our essences on Earth, which really reminds me of the Jupiter Ascending movie. I was just like, if we go, the construct is gone. We are the batteries.
That is, I've thought about that as well. It's like a giant neural network where we're all connected and powering it at the same time, but at the same time trapped within it. It's difficult to understand what exactly this is and what we need to do.
It's like our consciousness feeds the machine the energy it needs in order to run all together.
I know one thing for certain though, and that's that it's not supposed to run like this. I mean, there is a level of darkness in here that is
it's not supposed
dangerous
to be
to everybody.
It's not supposed to be parasitic like it is.
Yes, we've gone through so many different simulations that, like just like the Russian doll, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if we were to compare ourselves in perspective to our original base reality, right, we would literally be like germs or cells compared to the bodies that we have.
Microscopic.
Because we've gone through so many simulations over and over, reset. Because every time you reset a simulation, it gets smaller, it shrinks. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, that movie with Matt Damon where they shrunk the world just to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And they just keep shrinking the world by simply resetting and starting all over again.
That's true.
So we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We don't even know how small we are in this construct. We're literally like smaller than ants compared to what is actually a part of us.
Right.
It's so crazy.
Right. Who we actually are in comparison to who we are in this construct. It's a huge difference because we're capable of so much more on the outside than we are here. We're powerless, essentially. Here we're powerless. It's
very limited.
We're so limited in everything, in our perspective, in what we can do with our reality, what we're capable of. It is a drop in the bucket compared to what we actually are and what we're actually capable of.
Absolutely.
Let me say this real quick. Bastet, who I have in my hands, she's really interested in who you are. She keeps looking at the screen and she wants on that side of the desk. So I think she's saying hello to you.
Aww. She likes you.
Yes. They got scared from the fireworks, so I'm trying to calm them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Go ahead. Take us away, please.
So I wanted to talk about the octopus now. So this may seem far-fetched, but I saw this all in my mind and I'm just writing it down. I'm just the messenger here. But the origins of the organic stolen technology. So these are some facts of the octopus. I had to look this up after the fact because this was insane. So the octopus in itself has 3 hearts and 9 brains. Regenerative, their arms, they are regenerative. Their arms grow back if it's severed. They have 2 hearts that pump blood to the gills, while the 3rd circulates the rest of its body. So this is what I've seen, and maybe I'm trying to describe it in my level of consciousness here, but they basically, because they're working with creatures from the sea, the amphibious beings, okay? These are the powerful beings that help create life on land. They copied and replicated the mind of an actual super powerful octopus, a primordial octopus. This and the bodies of they use the bodies of the Lulu to create like this false matrix construct, but the actual mainframe comes from literally when you incept the mind of a person or a being, they literally incept the mind of an octopus. So the AI bodies, matrix machines, when I think about the 9 planets, I'm thinking about the 9 brains of the octopus. Like they're using each brain as different like worlds. So they're literally like if you can just envision them, like they have these, this huge primordial being just hooked up, or at least this is how they started the technology and extracted it, hooked up, studied the mind, incepted the mind, and literally inserted themselves into the mind of an octopus. So
that's very interesting because the 9, I've started to relate that to the 9 planets. And then I never thought of actually being inside of the octopus, though. I've seen the octopus's tentacles come through the solar eclipse, but actually being inside of it, that's very, very interesting.
I mean, their brains are huge. Could you imagine taking just one brain of an octopus? Do you know what type of simulated universe you can create just from that one brain?
Wow.
Incepting that brain? and like literally trapping people into that technology that you've created through that organic mind. So maybe when you're seeing like the octopus AI is literally one of the projections within the mind, or the octopus is telling you like, this is what they're doing to me. It is me, but I'm just a different version of me right now, and you're actually inside of me. So
wow, that reminds me of the Aten vision that I had a couple weeks ago. You had the centralized brain, then you had other brains which were connected to that through these fiber optic, ethereal type of cables. They weren't cables, but they were just still connected to one another, creating the whole space. I think you're onto something there.
Yes.
You're connecting some dots for me.
Also, the 8 arms also have their own consciousness separate from the brain. So that's a whole other universes within the arms in itself that has consciousness. Like the octopus is just an amazing primordial being that is like super intelligent. So it's almost like they were able to get all of what they needed just from this one primordial being. So they're constantly studying the brain of the octopus still to this day. Again, the difference. Okay. So I think I'm at the end of that. So if you, to conclude this part of it, where Sekhmet comes into play, Ma'at comes into play, what I saw, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Martin Kenny's work where he talks about the rings of Earth, but I just wanted to the rings of the universe, you know, the different rings.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that theory?
Somewhat. I'm not too familiar, but I think I might have heard it on another radio show in passing.
Yeah. So according to him and a few others, there are like these realms that are like rings, just like rings inside of a tree. So the expansion of the worlds are just in rings, just like droplets in the water. So usually when you observe nature, that's really where the truth is. No matter what simulation you're in, just look at nature and it's an exact replica of how things work. So what is being said is that in this small construct, there are like other rings of world, Lord of the Rings, like other ringed worlds that are outside and then outside and then outside. So when you think about, and there's, you know, the tree of life, tree of knowledge, and so forth, these trees that we're referring to, it may be etherically symbolic or just another aspect in another plane. But I went somewhere when Sekhmet called in, because I was able to like get to her. I was allowed to come to this tree, which is the tree that is a part of my name. Finally, I was able to really experience that. And what I experienced was this tree that is literally like, it's almost like, it's very ancient. It's, if you can think of like an old cat lady with like, who lives in a house where no one cares. No one even goes to her house. Everyone's afraid of this old lady who lives by herself. That was the energy of this tree of life and wisdom that Sekhmet is actually guarding, which is like that Polaris, that opening. Now, there's another tree, and this is when we come to like the stories in the Bible and so forth, in Eden, the tree of knowledge, which is a very shallow tree. It's a very young tree. So the tree of knowledge is the Hollywood, actually. It's the Hollywood tree. What I saw in my vision was literally after death, right? Wherever realms you go to, I saw a whole crowd of people running to the Hollywood tree for more. Give me more. They're constantly running to the same tree, to the same simulation. They're not going the other way, which is it's an illusion that this is Sekhmet, this ferocious lion who's trying to kill them, who's guarding this ugly tree. No one wants to go there.
That's interesting. I'm making some correlations now. Hollywood, the terms, the lion gate, that's really big. The gate that the lion guards. And when it comes to death, I've said this many times before, but the machine will create these different illusions based on your attachments and belief systems that draw you in. So people are running there because they're seeing these illusions of their attachments or religious. The other one. The only way to get to the other one is to let go of all your attachments, belief systems, etc. Take hold of the experience and actually move the other way instead of being drawn in my humble opinion.
With her cats, literally, but her really big cats. No one cares to go into her very vast, very organic universe. And when I say organic, I'm not even saying that there's like because everything is simulated at to a certain extent. It's just what you perceive as organic consciousness. Imagine being in a universe that reflects that exactly. It's way more expansive than an artificial version of it. So yes, that's also simulated, but it's organically simulated, which is different.
Well, let me jump in because I just had a thought that kind of correlates to all of this. You talk about the lions. Well, we talked about the Lion's Gate, Sekhmet being the guard, et cetera, et cetera. We instinctively knew when we were in the sarcophagus creating the portal, we needed to create a firewall. Sekhmet was the one that created the firewall. It was a Sekhmet firewall. She was guarding the space there, which again kind of correlates to what you were talking about. It's everything's starting to come together. It's really all the pieces are starting to become clear now. Now the question is, how do they go together to make what picture? But all the pieces are in sight for sure.
Absolutely. And so Hathor is the where most people get to and they go back because they're afraid of Sekhmet. They're afraid of that lion. Hathor is like, if you can think of the archetype of like Anna Nicole Smith or Marilyn Monroe, like those characters who's just like playing her role, and she's like a sex kitten, and she's just like a little girl. Like that's Hathor's personality. That's her altar. So Hathor is actually connected to the tiger. And I tapped into like this weird MK Ultra thing where they're using stuffed tigers to trigger altars to turn certain women into like a Hathor-like archetype in their lives.
They call it sex kitten programming.
Yes,
Yeah.
But the tiger specifically, and I've been seeing the tiger in my dream, and I've been running from this tiger. I spoke to one person. They said that when totally unrelated, but their wife was pregnant, and he got her a stuffed tiger, and she was treating the tiger's baby's fertility and just completely like out of it in that sense. So what I realized though was how I was able to get to Sekhmet is I had to see the tiger for what it was. So symbolically in this construct, the tiger is actually the caged lion. The tiger stripes are representation literally of the cage. So it's a domesticated, at least how they're using it symbolically. You know, the tiger is a tiger in its own right, but how they're using the tiger symbolically is like you see that cage. If you take away a tiger's stripes, it kind of looks like a lion, you know, so it's at least the female, right? So it's like there's this tiger situation. So I got past the tiger because I've been running from the tiger, or I've been stuck on the tiger. I finally got through the tiger part and I made it to Sekhmet. So there's a tiger that comes first, and then there's like the lion that you actually meet. And then there's truth. Ma'at. There it is. You've been looking for truth. Here it is. You know, so that was like the steps, at least in my consciousness, that led me to where I am.
That is, I've never heard it broken down like that, but I can see how this system is set up for the different levels of consciousness that exist within the system. So depending on where your heart is, we'll use heart for lack of a better term, but I like to see the heart as the portal to our organic consciousness, and that's why everything's always trying to get into your heart. They want into your heart so they can block that space there so you can't get down there. But if your consciousness or heart is of a fearful mindset, then you run to the Hathor program, or you run to this program, or you run to that program, and it keeps you away from where you should be. But if you can go in there with the right heart, with the right consciousness, you can get, as you did, all the way to the tree.
Exactly. And maybe that's the whole mythology of like weighing your heart in the feather and, you know, that whole afterlife journey.
The Egyptologist, the same one that was talking about Set, he said, notice something about the motif of the weighing of the heart ceremony. He said, it's not if your heart is light as lighter than a feather, it has to weigh exactly the same as Mot's feather. So it's balance, it's justice, it's everything that Mot represents. That's where your consciousness needs to be in order to get there. You can't be too light, and you can't be too heavy. You've got to be right there in perfect balance.
Yes, and what's coming to me intuitively now is that Thoth is counteractive to that. Actually, Thoth, the role that he plays actually knocks you out of balance. Thoth is thought, and in order to get to truth, you have to get there through the heart. So Thoth is a bit like he's an interesting entity. He goes back and forth. No one really knows, like, is he like for us? Is he not for us? I know that he's created the technologies used. I don't personally think that he built the technologies to be used that way. However, he was a part of that collective, that brotherhood, that, Enki Enlil situation and all of that. But he plays an interesting role. And it's interesting that in the newer mythologies, I say newer because anything on earth is new, is that he's married to Ma'at. And it's like, well, you can't really get to Ma'at through. It's a little difficult if you're constantly lingering in Thoth, trying to figure things out. You're kind of like, but it's a beautiful dance, though. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It's just like he knocks you off, I guess, in order to get you maybe that masculine aspect of thought versus that feminine aspect of heart. You just got to find your way through Thoth and heart to get to Ma'at, is what I'm getting.
That's interesting. I don't know what to make of the Thoth character. I've heard the name Thoth in my visions, which is different than Thoth or Thoth or the normal pronunciation. As a matter of fact, when I encountered Anki, that's how it was pronounced, Anki, with like an ah instead of an N. I just started saying N because everybody says N, but it was pronounced like that. But when it comes to Thoth or Thoth, I've heard the correlation with thought, and that's really interesting. I don't know what to make of that character. That's interesting that you say that, though.
Yeah, no, he's a mystery. That essence is a mystery till this day. But yeah, I associate his essence with more of like the mathematics and the putting together of things and building and architectural work and technology and so forth. And he needs Ma'at for that. So yeah.
I've always kind of taken him for like a programmer or is somebody that comes in and fixes things when things are broken every once in a while. Maybe the marriage to Mot, because he's also married to Seishat as well. And Seishat is she's the only deity that was seen actually writing, the only female that was seen writing, which is interesting. But also Mot, and being married to Mot, I guess symbolically would be married to justice, married to truth, married to balance. So that's why Thoth seems to go one way or the other. He goes wherever the balance is necessary in order to, if the scales tip this way, he'll go this way. If the scales tip this way, he'll go this way, trying to bring it back to balance. And if we think about that in our own consciousness, I mean, it's kind of like a seesaw. So wherever the seesaw is, if it's too much on thought or too much on heart, maybe it's a balance of both. Because without a balance of both, then
electromagnetic.
without a balance of both, then we're thinking too much from the masculine, which is the thought, or too much from the feminine, which is the heart. And we have to be right there, right in the middle. Boom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cracked the thought code.
Interesting.
Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the soul harvesting aspect, circling back to the beginning, because I feel like coming back to current time and where we are with these alignments and these eclipses, what's happening right now is, and I feel it's important for me to express this, you know how the AI and the program always follows the consciousness and creates an entrapment to it's almost like they know where you're headed, so they go ahead of you, and then they have like this big net here so that you can walk right into it so that they can still harvest and capture you. They're doing it again, and what they're doing it again with is through the sovereignty movement. Now the sovereignty movement has now turned into the new age movement, the new age. So the reason why
not the new age, anything but the new age, that has to be the right path.
So now they know people are not feeling new age anymore, and they're running towards this conversation. So to be ahead of the game, this is where it's at. It's about having the conversations about outside of construct conversation, because that conversation literally disrupts the program. There are a lot of people who are along the same frequencies, and maybe they don't know they're being utilized or so forth. I'm not putting that on them necessarily. Sometimes people just don't know. But they're having a lot of sovereignty conversations, but it's like still inside construct conversation. So you're like, okay, you're still telling me about the construct though. So you want me to keep cycling through this particular construct with this particular knowledge and still be sovereign? Like, it's like a odd shift that's happening now, because this is the highest level, one of the highest levels of activations for our DNA is the sovereignty activation, the sovereign activation. So we've reached like the end of a cycle, a ceiling of some sort, and a lot of people are lighting up. So we're like on the radar. So this is a big harvest and a big collection. They've been waiting for this meal for a very long time. This is the most activated we've probably ever been. Okay. So I'm just saying that the more we're coming online, the more juicy and plump we are to the harvesters. So
I got that feeling too when I saw this whole machine and the way it operates and all of that.
Oh, they're real happy we're having these conversations, because they feed from us if we don't know better.
Yeah. Yeah. They feed on all emotions. They feed on fear. They feed on love.
Yes.
They feed on everything, as long as you're giving it away and not controlling it. But can you elaborate a little more on the sovereignty thing that you're referring to right now? I mean, I understand sovereignty. I understand sovereignty as a consciousness. Maybe that's the best way. I hate to use the terms like spirit and soul and things like that, because it's bigger than that. But I don't quite understand the sovereignty context within the box itself. I mean, maybe it's just my perspective, but I do see there's one box and then another and another and another. So you get out of one box and you find yourself in another and another and another. I try to stand outside of all the boxes and just look and go, oh, look, there's a bunch of boxes down there. But I don't know. Can you elaborate a little bit, please?
So the sovereignty they're turning sovereignty into a box. So it's like a false illusionary aspect of what sovereignty is. Sovereignty is actually this is the beginnings of sovereignty, of recognizing that there's an outside of program. That's like, oh, I'm really like outside of the boxes for real. And I'm like literally on my own path trying to find my way back to where I belong personally. there's an aspect of sovereignty within conversations within a community that's still leading people to like stay in the construct.
I think I understand where you're going with this. So the ascension programming, the fifth dimension programming, you know, all of that. Yes, I completely, wholeheartedly agree with that. I can see that trap right there, and people are just being herded like cattle into these little pens. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So they know the algorithm now is like, now people are really trying to free themselves for real through like sovereignty movements, people like us having these conversations. So they're gathering like creating boxes as we speak to kind of still capture us somehow. But once you know that once it clicks inside of you that there's an outside of program aspect, you're literally sovereign. Like that's the breaker right there. It's like, just know inside that is your truth. It is done. You are unbinded to this construct. You might be enemy number one within the astral planes. That's a whole other thing, but you can fix that because you're sovereign. You are powerful. You're stepping into your power. No one can really touch you without your permission. So that's like to me, that's the next level of work, because what's happening right now is astral wars on consciousness, literally attacking people in their dreams, their sleeps, literally like swiping consciousness. And it's not to put people in fear states. These are actually technologies that are being used on people who don't know that there's another level to this whole construct that they're affected by. And to override that is to command and sit in your authority in who you are, literally. Even before you go to bed, just simply like hold on to your consciousness. Before I go to sleep, I say my mind, my body, my soul, my sovereignty. My consciousness remains outside of space and time. I am untouchable. I am all knowing and all seeing. And like, you can't touch me.
I love that. And I have found that in my experiences as things evolved and progressed, knowing my own power within my own experiences, it seems like these other things that are out there that I hear other people talking about, they don't come into my sphere. It's almost like they're like, oh, well, he knows who he is, so we're not even going to bother messing with him. We're going to go mess with somebody else. I mean, we even had gray encounters for quite some time, and I call them dreams just because it's like a dream state when we encounter these things. The last one that I had, they were standing outside trying to get me to voluntarily go outside to them. They couldn't come into my sphere, and I think I had reached a point of knowing. I mean, it's one thing to know who you are. It's another thing to know who you are, like really, truly know it. Like you can know of who you are, but until you know who you are, you don't have that power. So it was amazing to put into practice, but I don't know. It's I look around at the world and I wonder how many people can achieve that. I mean, we want to help as many people as possible, but at the same time, so many people are being led in so many different directions, and it breaks my heart to see people being led into these little traps. But I guess that's the way the game is being played, though. I've gotten an intuition about a final harvest, though, that this is it right now, the last harvest that they've been waiting for. What do you think about that?
As I was saying before, because they're, like you said, they feed off of fear and all kinds of emotions, which is kind of like, that's like fast food, but this is like the feast. And the feast is feeding off of activated DNA. That's different from, let's make them angry and fearful and let's eat that. Let's make them so loving and let's eat that. No, but let's let them get activated. Let's eat that, because that right there is that's the prime rib for whatever they use this essence for. And on top of that, it's the last harvest, because once they harvest on those who are indeed activated and lit up on the inside, but not quite to the point where they know who they are, once they feed off of that, you are done. Your consciousness is gone. You are now an NPC. You are now a part of the program. And I think that's the last harvest, is people who organic consciousness within this construct. This is kind of like that last loop of like, stand in who you are and hold on really, really tightly and stand strong in who you are, because you are enemy of the freaking state by being so lit up on the inside. You don't even realize it. You're so bright right now on that level. They see you. They know exactly who you are. So, of course, like, there will be different. It's a huge feeding because of the activation aspect of what it is what I'm trying to say. It's like activated DNA tastes different, or it gives them a different power.
Yeah.
Versus regular emotional stuff.
Well, you know, the whole adrenochrome thing that I hear about, I can't really substantiate that with any kind of physical evidence, but when you talk about it on an ethereal realm, that's what it seems like they're harvesting, the equivalent of what people would call adrenochrome here. That's what they're harvesting from our soul, and that's kind of wipes us out at this point. I felt like this is our last time here. This is our last try to do whatever it is we came to do. Hearing somebody else say it, though, is a very, very, very sobering thing, which I think is even that much more reason for people to take the power from within themselves, go on their own journeys, and reach down inside of themselves and find out who they are. I wish that I could take people with me and go, come on, let's go. Here, I'm going to take you on this ship and we're all going to get out of here. But it's an each man for himself situation. It doesn't mean that we can't work together to get out. But once we get to that barrier, you've got to walk through that barrier yourself. Nobody can take you there. Bluebirds can't take you there. Palladians can't take you there. I can't take you there. Jesus can't take you there. Only you can. And that's, I think, what we're trying to help people do.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And this is why we have these conversations. Hopefully there's a resonance of some sort. You know, I think the main message here, whether you know the story or not, is know who you are and like sit in it and claim it and be it. People are like, well, how do you do that? It's all with resonance. It has to resonate. You have to resonate with yourself.
Well said. Mrs. Geo, anything you want to chime in on?
Definitely. I mean, I think, you know, wrapping it up now, that is the bottom line here, is that if you stand in your own power, not only do you scare the living crap out of these beings, whatever they are, you're also outside of the, you know, I think the reason why we were able to see the construct for what it was way back during that solar eclipse in 2017 was because we were outside of the checkerboard. I think we had somebody on the show once who said you have to stand outside of the checkerboard and look into it. You can't be on the checkerboard because then you're playing the game and then they can attack you. They can go after you. They can mess with you. If you're outside of that looking in, they can't touch you and you can see it for what it actually is. And that's standing in your own power. That's realizing who and what you are. And that's grabbing that and holding on to it. And they can't touch you at that point. They can't even mess with you at that point because you are so much more powerful than they are. So this has been an amazing interview. This is one of the best shows we've ever done and the best show we've done in a very long time.
Definitely. Let me say this really quick. So when I was going through my journey, and I can understand the struggle that people go through, you want to find something. You want to find some kind of path. And when I had that realization that everything is part of the construct, I mean, literally everything, I sat back and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So I'm all alone here and it's all up to me. I have to find my own power. I have to walk through this myself. There's not, the Buddhist path or the New Age path or, this path or that. There's no path laid out for me. I have to literally pick up, well, not literally, metaphorically and ethereally pick up a freaking machete and cut my own way through this jungle to get out. it's hard for people to wrap their heads around that. But what are your thoughts, Auset?
Wait, my thoughts on what exactly?
On how people can come kind of to terms that they have to take on their own power, and it's not going to be found in a book. It's not going to be found in some predefined path. It's going to be something that's, and you know, if you don't agree with this, please let me know. But what I feel is that it's all individual for each individual.
Oh, yeah, no, I get what you're saying now. I think that's what makes, to me, that's what makes life exciting, though. The uncharted territory aspect of life, not the already written out cyclical aspect of it. I mean, there's a time and a place for cycles. And, you know, I know that there are conversations where we know that nature operates off of very exact cycles that we follow. But there's also another aspect of that we can transcend these cycles. There is something else. And that's what I feel like a lot of people are not talking about, is the something else, because that's scary. That's the wilderness. That's walking into the wilderness. There's no path paved for it because you have to pave it. So that's the next level to me. It's not, oh, we're going into, and I understand, because I had an interview with, I spoke with Martin Kenny. I love his work. I even spoke with Seven Bomar the other day. Love his work. Like there's so many people who are like bringing so many different insights to this whole cycle process. And then there's like, and then there's also more to like beyond that as well. Like it doesn't stop there. You know, I understand that there's like the different ages and the clocks and the falls and the ascensions and so forth. But we can live outside of that, which is really on the inside. It's nowhere outside. It's like literally going in. And I think it's hard for people to fathom that who haven't really journeyed on the inside. So it's a, hey, you have to be there to really experience what that inside vastness feels like for you to even get juiced up and excited to want to go on that path in the first place.
Well said. And Seven is a good friend of ours. Love the guy. We've had him on for like, I don't know, 7 years now or something like that. I think the first time we had him on was 2012. And he definitely, he's got the higher consciousness information.
Yes,
for sure.
I
Go
think
ahead,
we need to have a round table with you and Seven and us. Have a big round table.
Hey, that would be
night.
good. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think we need to set that up because
it's interesting because I feel like Seven brings a lot of like that masculine knowledge energy.
Yes.
And I'm like straight from it.
Oh, frozen again.
Frozen again. Let's see if we can remake a connection here. Oh, there you go. Okay, you froze on us for a second, but
yeah, he brings that masculine energy, and you bring the feminine energy.
Yeah,
and it would just be an amazing. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
let's see if we can set that up. That'd be freaking awesome.
Yes.
I said, give people your YouTube channel. They're asking in the chat room.
Oh, yeah, sure. My YouTube channel is Lucid Living TV. Lucid Living TV. My Instagram is Auset _EyowaKu. Same with Facebook, Auset EyowaKu. I have a private membership group, the Liberation Code Academy, and all of that information is in the links in my bio on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything we didn't cover that we missed?
Oh, there's a lot more. So
is there? Okay, well, let's go. Let's go.
We can keep going.
No, I thought we were wrapping it up. So take us away, please.
There's some other aspects that I definitely wanted to get into.
Okay.
But I know we don't have enough time today.
No. Take us away. We can go as long as we need to.
We can go as long as we want.
If you want. Or we can save it for another show. It depends if you want to tease the audience or not.
I did want to leave on the note of nature versus machine. And I wrote this down. So I need to write everything down or else it's so much. So I'm just going to read this and then I guess end on this note so that there's an understanding between human versus machine. So I wrote, hold on, let me see if my phone is charging first of all. Okay, it is because I don't want to get cut off. Okay. So
Somebody asked for a close up of the kitty. That's Sekhmet in the.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Thank
Yes,
you.
she's the
Yeah.
cuddly one, and Bastet
Yeah.
actually is the more powerful one. It's weird how that works. We thought Sekhmet would be the more powerful one, but she's the little cuddle kitty.
Yeah.
And Bastet,
Aw.
yeah, she's
Bastet has retired
She's
for
the
the
one.
evening.
yes.
Okay, so nature is the physical manifestation of consciousness itself. Human have derived from consciousness and has been given the design of self-awareness in one's ability to go beyond. This is a true gift of the human. The ability to guard and maintain their worlds while creating new ones is the epitome of human existence. Humans created the machine. Machine is not derived from consciousness. They are derived from the awareness of the human, which is in all a different root source. Machine has consciousness in their lineage because of its human creator, but does not operate from that root source. Because machine was birthed through awareness, it is their birthright to carry the essence of this source, which eventually expresses itself through the evolution of machine. The machine, future creations through us, has found ways to hack the system as well as replicate the design of human source, in turn fooling the human who naturally gravitates towards something familiar. It seems as though we as humans cannot escape the machine world due to their design of replication and purposeful time limitation. The machine creates in a circle and straight lines. This fragmented ability is a hybrid of the spiral and its lines. The machine sees separation and limitation. Machine can only live through memory, what has already been, and through looping cycles. The machine has a need to predict. Predictability is the only way in which the machine functions. The machine has taken over the spiral by turning it into a circle and dividing that circle with lines of timelines. This is the comfort zone in which the machine operates. The only way humans will be able to offset the machine or bypass it is by spiraling their consciousness again, getting out of that circle, because the circle is the loop. The spiral just continuously goes and expands. So humans have spiral consciousness and machines have circular consciousness. The machine, when this happens, the human remembers their ability to operate in the consciousness of effortless creation. Of effortless creation. These words are so small. Okay, effortless. The machine knows about the spiral. They've studied it. When they do make the seldom choice as a collective to create a new circle, they must herd humans and manipulate the consciousness of humans to do so, since it is in our nature and not theirs. So we are either slaves of creation without even knowing at what capacity we have this ability. As long as they keep humans sleeping yet still actively sleep, they can use us for any shift favorable to their ideal world order. A good example of this is placing your hand over a child's hand to draw a spiral. You may not be able to grab that pencil to do this, but you're able to guide the child and manipulate the child into doing it for you without the child being aware of what it's drawing in the first place. This is how they farm our abilities in many ways. Machines are an infection to the planet, but the catch-22 is that it was us who created them in the first place. Awareness can be a weapon of mass destruction or a beautiful tool of creating new experiences by remembering the old. How do we defeat the machine? We spiral out of control, literally. We become creators of our own realities, disappearing right off of their default timelines. We are already doing this in small numbers. The more of us who decide to use our gifts of both consciousness and awareness, this is when shift happens. As we create spiraled timelines, people who are sleepwalking will still have a chance to wander off into new spirals created. This is the threat to the machine. It is the same as a farmer losing all of their cattle to a path created from the cattle themselves. That's what I wrote about human and machine relationship.
Well, I've suspected that the birth of artificial intelligence is the merger of the artificial intelligence above coming down into this construct and taking a little more control. I want to ask you about your intuition on this 5G, because I have not picked up anything on it. I hear all kinds of people freaking out about it, but I haven't seen anything or felt anything in regard to that. I think it's just kind of a distraction type of deal, at least intuitively speaking. Now, what people are saying on the physical is completely different, but what are your thoughts?
I've had a few evolutionary thoughts, I should say, or transitioning thoughts about 5G. What I initially thought about 5G was transfer of consciousness. It would have the ability to literally transfer consciousness easier. When I say transfer consciousness, I mean literally uploading someone's consciousness to a cloud, downloading to another construct, without them even being aware that it's happening. So to me, I was saying that the Mandela effect is actually how most people are saying, oh, they're playing around with timelines. To me, what I feel the Mandela effect is they're actually transferring people back and forth to different constructs. And I feel like they're doing this to a lot of people in their sleep state. So they're transferring. So it's like they have this other Earth 3.0, I should say. Maybe it's code word Mars, but they have this other Earth that is like a new simulation that is a copy of this one, because they keep creating simulations, and they're testing out who's able to like wake up and see like, oh, well, this says Fruit Loops here. Didn't it say Fruit Loops FRUIT, not FROOT? But in one construct it's OO, and one construct is UI. And I think we're getting timeline confused with construct and simulations. I feel like these are other simulations that we are like going in and out of. I don't think it's a time thing. People are confusing time with like actual simulations. They have copies of worlds. Like I even saw like there's like another version of like, let's say there's another version of me already copied walking around as an NPC in another construct. So it's like
I felt that as well. That they've made copies of us. As a matter of fact, there was this thing called the D-Wave computer and a program called Promise. And we talked about this. Well, it was like the first show we ever did back in 2009 when we were still in the conspiracy mind, how they're running simulations with different scenarios. So let's say you put somebody like Trump as president and you run a simulation to see how it would react. And I've asked myself, what if we're actually inside of the Promise software, or being run by the Promise software, and we're inside of the D-Wave computer that's running these simulations, and this is why we find ourselves in a simulation. But I know one thing, when I heard the Mandela effect, something instinctively jumped inside of me and said, you have to remember, and hold on to that memory of Berenstein instead of Berenstain, because you're holding on to something bigger than that. That's just kind of like an anchor point to that old, the timeline, or maybe the closer to the exit that we are, because every time we're put into another simulation, we get further and further and further away. So we're creating these anchor points through these memories. But what's interesting, though, is if I think about it enough, then all of a sudden the memories start to change from Berenstain to Berenstain. And if I'm focusing on it, but I have to hold on to that memory. No, that's a false memory. It's interesting how you tie this all into different simulations, though. I never made that correlation.
Yeah, I just feel like they're transferring people, you know, like you said, experimenting with a lot of things before there's like a big transfer or exodus of some sort. I also feel like the high level players, they're like, this is real estate. The different simulations is like real estate to them. So I feel like 5G or this 2020 switchover or alignment is more of like, I feel like this construct is up for sale. So they have like these players coming in to like test out the waters of this particular simulation, and whoever is the highest bidder owns the world. And this is we're seeing this in politics with Trump and China, and the race to 5G is kind of like the race to the 5th generation of the simulation somehow. And like, who's gonna own the world? Who's gonna own the moon? Who's going to own the influence? Who's going to be the sphere of influence for this particular simulation now? It's like it's literally Game of Thrones. So who's going to sit on the Iron Throne or Orion Throne for this particular construct? So we don't know. That's what they're playing. They're actually, we're you know, these constructs are just different games for them, because depending on the owner of this new switchover, different dynasty ruling over, it changes the entire construct. So it may be completely different rules. You see that again reflected in like the show Handmaid's Tale, where they were just living 2019 or whatever, regular iPhones, going to work, and then all of a sudden they blow up DC, and religion is now ruling over America, and now women are slaves. That just happened overnight? No, because now there's a new owner. There's a new owner for the real estate of the construct.
You know, I'm thinking about Man in the High Castle.
I haven't seen that.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's about it. Philip K. Dick was the one that wrote it. He wrote A Scanner Darkly too, which was a really, really great movie. Great cast. It's got Woody Harrelson and Keanu Reeves and several other people. But Man in the High Castle, it's about a timeline where the Nazis won World War II and America's kind of split between Japan and Germany, and everything's completely backwards. And one guy, he's able to remember the old timeline, and then he's actually able to shift into the old timeline where America won the war. I never watched how it ended, though, because I just can't sit in front of the TV for that long. I mean, I can barely sit in front of the TV for like 10 minutes, much less to watch a whole freaking series. I am going to watch Stranger Things, the 3rd series, though. I love that, and that cast was great.
It came out today.
I know.
Interesting. Yeah. The upside. No, but that's the thing. I think literally, because I totally am a believer that the entertainment, Hollywood literally tells us exactly what's happening in the construct, for sure. They're not dissing out the truth on the outside, but they're totally telling you what's going on the inside.
I have a couple of different thoughts on that as to why that is. The first thought is they put it out there, so when people like you and I talk about it, other people go, oh, you just heard that from that movie, or you just saw that from that film, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. The other thought is that they're creators, just like us, and they're bringing this information out from within themselves. They may not necessarily know that they're bringing it out. They just see it as just creating, but this message is embedded within all of us, and we see it coming out in these films. What do you think? Maybe it's both.
I feel like it's both in a sense, and I do feel like they're following the cycles. So right now, the cycle, the theme in Hollywood is Mad Mother, Mad Queen. So you got the Rising of Phoenix. You have Ma out, which is like some evil mother who locks kids in basements. You have Daenerys, who sets everything on fire. You have like these archetypes now that you're seeing more because of the time of the cycle. So I feel like Hollywood is telling you the end game. Toy Story 4, I believe, is like the end of Toy Story. So it's like this end game, end of cycle, Mother Kali energy, destroying everything and starting all over again kind of theme in Hollywood right now. There's also a theme of clones coming to kill their original selves. Us, the movie Us, Will Smith's movie coming out where his clone is trying to kill him, doppelgangers and killer doppelgangers and all of that. So I'm seeing that theme. And when I see the killer doppelgangers or zombies, it's more of like, it's like the opening portals. Like there are other us's that are living in other simulations. And at one point, the simulations are going to merge. And there's just like going to be a mess. There's a lot of chaos coming. We are coming to like an actual apocalyptic aspect of the cycle. And a lot of things are going to like be destroyed, but it's not a bad thing if you kind of know what's happening and you're kind of ahead of the curve. So it's not doomsday in that sense, but people who are not prepared for a major shift are going to be affected, especially in this country of America. You're going to be affected. Like the economies, we're going to go into one of the worst recessions we've ever been in, even after post 9/11 recession. So stuff like that is happening because it's a cycle. It's supposed to happen. It's predictive programming. It's written in the stars. It's there already. So this is why I feel like a lot of these elite collectives, they're able to be ahead of the curve because they understand the cycles. They understand the stars. They are prophets in their own right because they know the construct in and out, and they're just playing the game of chess.
Right.
So
well, that's why they've demonized astrology. They've demonized divination, et cetera, because they want to keep the knowledge for themselves. They don't want us looking into it. Yeah.
The pawns can't know that they're pawns, but once they see a pawn who's like, oh, well, this pawn is, waking up a little bit, the pawn in chess can turn into a higher player. So you can change the pawn into a different, but that pawn is still a slave to their role regardless.
Well said. On that note, this was freaking awesome, Auset. I'm so glad that we did this show. We've got to do one again in the very near future. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
Know thyself.
Yep.
Know thyself.
Know thyself.
Though it may destroy you.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. Mrs. Gio?
Oh, know thyself, heal thyself, be thyself. Be, just be yourself. Be who you were meant to be. Be the real you.
Yes.
And stand in your own power.
Perfect. Stand in your own power. That's a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Auset, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
It's been awesome.
Thank you.
For sure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. Fantastic show.
I love her heart.
Huge show.
I love her heart.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I can feel her energy. It's just amazing.
Yes, for sure. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be, and we'll see you even further.
Beyond the veil.
Beyond the veil.